Good morning. And a nice morning it is. It is 6:30, but it's 41 degrees already, and it's clear. It's going to be mainly sunny today and really nice with highs spiked right into the middle and upper 50s into this afternoon. And tonight mostly cloudy, but we'll get back to the weather with you in just a minute. Welcome. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone on Radio Westchester, your radio station at the train station. It's Monday, February 24th. 2020. Our top stories this morning. This one out of Yonkers. Fire officials are saying now 1 is dead, 3 injured in a 4-alarm blaze there. Cuomo says, the governor that is, at least 18 Jewish community centers across the country have been targeted with bomb threats. One New York state worker made, believe it or not, $212,000 in overtime. Just overtime alone. A Yonkers Park worker is accused of kidnapping a woman at gunpoint. And by the way, it's coming up National Pancake Day tomorrow. And, we'll tell you where to get free pancakes. And we're also going to tell you about what's next with a major high-rise development on 20 Church Street here in New Rochelle. First, let's get to the weather. Once again, welcome to the program. Nice day today. The weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. It's 41. You'll be able to go to the park today with your lunch. It's clear as a bell outside. It's going to get up to the mid-50s this afternoon. Tonight, mostly cloudy, with showers, though, arriving after midnight. Lows around 40 degrees. Tuesday, cloudy with periods of rain throughout the day. Still mild, though, but not as warm as today, with highs around 38 degrees. And tomorrow night, cloudy with periods of rain, lows around 39, and then on into Wednesday. Showers ending very early in the morning. Clouds break for some sunshine. Highs around 46 degrees. Welcome to the program. A lot going on also in sports. It looks like the Rangers did not, for those of you who are hockey fans, did not come to an agreement with Mr. Kreider over the weekend. He the top free agent on the market. We don't know what his agent was asking for. We don't know whether or not he signed in the middle of the night, but about 6 hours ago, when last we checked, and the papers this morning are saying it looks like he will be traded by the deadline today. Also, Mr. Cespedes is in the news. You know him, the Met that couldn't. We'll be back with sports, too, as well. Let's get to the top stories. Officials say 1 person has died and 3 injured in a fire at a 4-story apartment building in Yonkers. This happened last night. It's reported in News 12, LOHUD. Everyone has it this morning. The 4-alarm fire at 112 Saratoga Avenue started just before 8 p.m. Neighbors say they heard people screaming inside the building during the fire. 1 person was forced to jump from a 3rd-story window to escape the flames, and it took firefighters more than 3 hours to get the flames under control. Most residents had escaped with only their clothes on their backs. And as we know more, so too will you. Governor Andrew Cuomo was in Albany yesterday visiting one of at least 18 Jewish community centers that were targeted with bomb threats across the country. This in News 12 this morning. The threats were sent in an anonymous letter, or anonymous email, I should say. Cuomo visited the Sidney Albert Albany Jewish Center, which was evacuated early on Sunday morning and later declared safe. It is not clear if any of the 18 JCCs in the Hudson Valley area were threatened. And you think you spend a lot of time in the office. Well, 1 state worker last year logged 3,600 hours of overtime, an additional 69 hours a week. And he made more than $200,000 in overtime. The worker, Denise Williams, a security training assistant at the Kirby Forensic Psychiatric Center in Manhattan, did that. Now, 3 state workers raked in more than 3,000 hours in overtime in 2019, prompting Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli to say he'll look into it. And yes, a little elbow to the cheekbone of Mr. DiNapoli, the way he wouldn't look into the city of Mount Vernon. We will do all we can to get him voted out of office. Anything that we can do from this microphone in honor of the people of Yonkers. Meanwhile, Mount Vernon. Meanwhile, a Yonkers Parks Department worker was arrested on Thursday and accused of kidnapping a woman at gunpoint before November. Owen Drain, also known as White Boy and Tommy, used a cell phone to get the woman into a car in the Bronx. This according to a federal indictment. And in the days after the abduction, the NYPD released surveillance images of two men who were suspected of carrying the person out. Yonkers records show Drain works as a tree trimmer in the city. The 35-year-old has been suspended without pay. As we pass through now, 6:38. Construction of a 28-story mixed-use apartment complex in downtown New Rochelle is about to begin. $131.2 million. That was the loan it took to begin construction. The first phase of the project at 26 Division Street. The tower is the first phase of the 26 Division Street project, which will deliver a total of 742 residential units and 675 parking spaces. RXR held a ceremonial groundbreaking back in October, and this is the second development by RXR Realty. The developer secured rights to the site and several others in the downtown when it applied for this special zoning area that has facilitated so much development here on the Queen City. It is 6:37. New Yorkers may have gotten used to getting a nice property tax relief check in the mail each fall over recent years, but they might need to forget about looking in the mailbox this coming fall. Governor Andrew Cuomo did not propose continuing the 3-year, $1.2 billion property tax relief credit program. It expired last year, and Cuomo's decision not to include it in his budget, obviously it has been a tough one to take because he's dealing with a $6 billion budget deficit. And what some people are saying is the property tax credit was intended to be available for a limited period as savings from the property tax cap grew. So no more special checks, folks. Pardon me. Now, finances matter, and this today, a little scary. Stock markets are falling around the world after the number of coronavirus cases surged, now in Italy and South Korea, putting two more major economies at risk from a virus that has already caused widespread disruption in China. South Korea's KOSPI, that's KOSPI index, closed down nearly 3.9%, its worst day since October 2018, after coronavirus cases in the country past 800. In Italy, the main market index was down more than 4.5% after the number of cases there topped 200, including 5 deaths. Now, U.S. stocks are poised to open sharply lower this morning. Futures were down more than 800 points. That's more than 2.7%. Meanwhile, S&P index futures declined 2.7%. The NASDAQ off 3.3%. And the big problem, a growing number of companies are warning that the coronavirus will prevent them from meeting sales or profit targets for the first 3 months of the year. And for those of you on your way to Wall Street now, you know that revises forecasts and affects stock prices as we pass through 6:39. All righty, let's get to this story that's troubling hockey fans, at least Ranger fans. Tick, 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 tick. As the clock droned on Sunday afternoon, turned to last night, still with no smoke signal as to the Rangers and Chris Kreider getting any closer to signing a contract extension. It seems more and more likely the Blue Shirts were going to move from their 28-year-old power forward and find the best trade they can before today's 3 p.m. deadline. It was always a priority for the Blue Shirts to attempt to re-sign Kreider, said Brett Krieges in the Post, the club's first-round pick, number 19 overall in 2009. But the Rangers' salary cap situation changed drastically last summer when they were able to sign free agents Arturi Panarin and Jacob Trouba for a combined annual salary cap hit of just under $20 million. And the number one expert around these parts, also in the Hockey Hall of Fame himself, Larry Brooks, is saying with the contract not done, Kreider's likely out his way out the door. So too could be Jesper Fast, and he's a very fine defensive forward for the Rangers. So too could be their backup goalie at this point, Mr. Georgiev. Elsewhere in sports, and since we're on hockey, the Islanders won last night, defeating the San Jose Sharks by a score of 4-1, and they're still back in the hunt. They're still in a wild card situation, and the way they play, they could well move further on up in the standings. And we told you a little bit about this, but it's kind of odd that Cespedes is in the news. He was on the back page of the newspapers today. Jonas Cespedes, the New York Met, who was out the last season and a half, avoided all talk about wild boars yesterday. As you know, it has been rumored that he hurt himself off baseball time, chasing somehow a wild boar he has a ranch down near the Mets facility in Florida, but otherwise was willing to answer questions from reporters for the first time this spring. The Mets outfielder, who last week said he wouldn't speak to the media this season, broke his silence, saying his focus was on the future. Cespedes was rehabbing last May from surgery on both heels when he sustained multiple right ankle fractures during an encounter with a wild boar on his ranch. That's what was first reported by the Post, who gave us the story. It's believed Cespedes was freeing the animal from a boar trap. What did he have to say about it? I'm not going to speak about the past. Well, anyway, for those of you who are Cespedes fans, sorry about that. Here's a little story before we come back with some of the national news and some of the odd and end news. Tomorrow is Free Pancake Day, or Pancake Day. Don't ask me, but all of a sudden we're being popped with stories. We even have a guest coming on from IHOP a little later. If you like pancakes and you like Nutella, you can commute through Grand Central Terminal. That is, if you do, mark your time, because they will be giving away free free stuff, Nutella and pancakes in the Grand Central Terminal tomorrow. It's all free. All you have to do is bring in a bottle of syrup, opened or unopened, and you receive complimentary stuff and a 13-ounce jar of the hazelnut spread. You know, I've never had any Nutella. I don't know about you. I don't even know if it is any good. All righty, when we come back, obviously, we'll share stories about Bernie, some important public figures who have changed sides. Seems to be a lot of that going on lately. Right now, it seems as if we're headed, unless Mr. Bloomberg does something, to a Bernie. I mean, as someone texted yesterday, worth the price of admission if Bernie and the president face off. The men of two extremes, to be sure. So we'll talk about that when we come back. We'll also talk about 1/3 of parents are delaying giving vaccines to their children, which is so troubling. And 5 things to know about President Trump's trip to India. And most important is they really laid out the rug, and gave him a real grand reception in India yesterday. And the president's talking perhaps about having a trade deal with that country. Oh, and I did skip a little noteworthy story while we were talking about the Ranger trade or not. And that is, and this rarely happens in hockey, but over the weekend, the Carolina Hurricanes won a game after 2 goalies got hurt with their emergency backup. The guy drives a Zamboni for him. I mean, obviously he's an amateur player, fairly accomplished amateur player. And had played some minor pro, but he made 8 saves in relief of Carolina's 2 injured netminders in a 6-3 victory over the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we thank Fox News for that story. All right, let's go back and check on the weather, talk about a couple of sponsors, and we will return. The weather, as you know, is brought to you by, and that's exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. 41. It's beautiful out there. It's clear as a bell, mainly sunny right now, or actually through the day, and really nice with highs spiking right into the middle and upper 50s into this afternoon. Tonight, mostly cloudy with showers arriving, though, after midnight. Lows around 40, and on into Tuesday, it will be cloudy, and you figured it out right. Cloudy with periods of rain throughout the day. Still mild, but not as warm as yesterday, rather today, I should say, with highs around 49 degrees. And as we get into Wednesday, showers ending very early in the morning. Clouds break for some sunshine. That's nice. Highs around 46. Turning a bit windy, though, as we dry out. Thursday night, partly cloudy. Wednesday night, partly cloudy and colder with lows around 26. And I jumped to Thursday, so I'll finish it. A mix of sun and clouds. Windy and cold, though. But now they're calling cold 40 degrees. Heading to March. Heading to the Ides of March. Alrighty, let's take a look at our sponsors for today. Aging Issues Management, their partners, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Pena & Kahn, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. As we pass through 647, let's get to some of these other stories that we've been covering for you. But first, welcome to Mornings with Bob Marrone. As the sun is sharing itself with us a little better this morning, a little more right now from the show opening. And now, wow, some 18 minutes ago. We are Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am he. This is Radio Westchester, your radio station at the train station, broadcasting on MyTuner Radio. The apps you can go to are Mornings with Bob Marrone, RadioWestchester.com. If you like to watch while you listen, you can also do so on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Periscope. We are also available on iHeartRadio and iTunes. Welcome to the program. We have some other stories to cover with you, and then we'll get into the issues of the day. We have this new plastic bag coming, just to talk about regional news, and some business leaders and New Yorkers are ahead of regulations, barring a staple of city life. And a lot of people are saying they can't do without it. State lawmakers approved a ban on most kinds of single-use plastic bags last year, saying the move would reduce litter and help fight against climate change. There are exemptions, though, included for takeout orders, dry cleaners, and garbage bags. Now, New Yorkers did support the ban, 62 to 33%, according to a Siena College poll. Opponents fear an economic burden in counties allowing a 5-cent fee on paper bags as a way to encourage consumers to bring reusable bags. But still, ban supporters are focused on local and global environmental damage from plastic bags, including manufacturing pollution, etc. But still, low-income New Yorkers, and there are a lot of us, don't have the resources to buy recycled bags, and even with the promise of 5 to 10% refunds for some. So just thought you'd want to know the ban is coming through, but a lot of people do not like it. And a story that's still in the news, and we're going to keep it in the news too, because it has a lot to do with how your tax dollars don't do what they're supposed to do. The warning signs were everywhere, ignored along the way to little Thomas Valva's heartbreaking death, a chilling chronology constructed by the dead 8-year-old boy's mother from court records and other documents lays out how child welfare caseworkers and lawyers continually missed or ignored indicators of the ongoing abuse before the autistic child's January 17th killing, allegedly at the hands of his brutal father. Now, the paperwork compiled by Justina Zubko-Valva was shared with the Daily News, who gave us the story. Now, listen to this. Among the terrifying allegations, her husband, Michael Valva's fiancé, warned the boys 15 months before Thomas's death to never visit their school nurse about anything. The mother, embroiled in a bitter divorce with Michael Valva, lost custody of her son after a September 6 order from Nassau County Judge Hope Zimmerman barred her from seeing the boys. The mother, as recounted in her real-time writings about the case, spent the next 18 months absolutely terrified for her children's safety. And she spoke to Child Protective Services, she spoke to lawyers, she spoke to the authorities, she spoke to police, she spoke to the judge. Nobody believed her, or at least nobody acted. And the boy was killed, but worse still, the boy was killed cruelly, just absolutely cruelly. Now, a little bit more about this coronavirus. Iran now has the number 2 highest toll after China. And in Italy now, the number's up to 152 stricken amid a Venice lockdown. Imagine that. Don't go to Venice on your vacation just yet. Now, the epicenter of Iran's outbreak is the holy city of Qom, where travelers from China brought the virus, according to ministry spokesperson Kanush Jananpur. The country had reported 6 deaths from the virus Saturday, only to amend the figure to add 2 more, and that just continues. Oh, so much news this morning. I got to get to all of it here. Got to be sure we get to all of it. We covered the hockey story. All right, Clint Eastwood. As you know, longtime Republican has always backed Republican candidates. He says he likes Mike. Clint Eastwood said Mike Bloomberg is his choice for the White House in 2020, backing away from his support of Republican candidates in past elections. He said, and I quote, "The best thing we could do is just get Mike Bloomberg in there." Eastwood, 89, can't believe he's 89, the iconic Hollywood tough guy, said he doesn't like President Trump's nasty persona. Eastwood said he wishes Trump would act in a more genteel way without tweeting and calling people names. He said, "I would personally like for him to not bring himself to that level." That's a big shift for the director, who praised candidate Trump in 2016 for setting aside political correctness, even though he didn't actually endorse the future president. Eastwood is a Republican stalwart who famously endorsed Mitt Romney in 2012. He debated an empty chair representing President Barack Obama at the Republican National Convention that year. That is quite a shift. Although on the other side of the fence, the president, speaking of his tweets and stuff on Sunday, is suggesting that Representative Adam Schiff leaked intelligence that Russia's backing Senator Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential bid. This after the president fired the man who gave the news to the Senate committee. Could have been Schiff, could have been anybody. I mean, obviously somebody leaked it, but the president nonetheless was upset that Schiff or anybody else heard this. But in case the president didn't get the memo, that's their job. The Congress gets to hear these things, and one can hope that it wasn't leaked. Even though I'm glad it was personally, they shouldn't be leaking stuff. Now, I'm looking at my computer, by the way, and I just want to be sure that we are not rebroadcasting anything and you're not hearing 2 stories. If you are, please let us know. We will put a stop to that. Greyhound is prepared to stop allowing immigration checks on buses. The nation's largest bus company says it will stop allowing Border Patrol agents without a warrant to board its buses to conduct routine immigration steps. And a group tied to the GOP, this is pretty cool, but the GOP and the Democrats do the same thing. They forward money to candidates that they think their guy can beat. In this case, a political committee linked to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is funding ads and other campaign materials designed to meddle in North Carolina's election. So they're funding one of the candidates that Mitch doesn't like. The Russians are helping out Bernie. The president this morning was praising Bernie. But that's just because they're in power, folks. Just to be fair, at least in this case, before I do my monologue, the monologue doesn't require fairness, by the way. It's an opinion piece. But just to be fair, the Democrats do the exact same things. They just don't have enough power these days to get on with it. It's 6:55, and a monologue I've been threatening and talking about and thinking about. Haven't written it out, though. I'm almost too troubled to write it and see it on paper. And I know it's upset people on both sides when I tell them. Bernie fans when I tell them. Certainly Trump fans. Trump inspired it. And here's the deal. Now, there are things that President Trump has accomplished that I think he doesn't get enough credit for. And I'm starting with that because the whole point of what I'm saying is the ends justifying the means. That dynamic has become so meaningful in American life, whether it's those, I wouldn't say the crooks on Wall Street, that's not fair, but those that become crooks, like the guy at, or at least cause this company to crook you, the guy at Wells Fargo, the men who brought you 2008 and 2009, the people that run sports, think Houston, think the New England Patriots, the people that run local politics, the Bernie Sanders fans who want what he does one way or another, even if it's not part of our fabric here in America, or the current president who has broken every rule you possibly can but wins and gets stuff done. Now, for those of you who don't like the president or some of the things he's accomplished, that's a separate issue, okay? For some of you who like what he's done, that's a separate issue from where I'm going with this. We have a Republican form of government, and I ask everyone who comes on, professional pundits, how many Americans they think know what a Republican form of government is. And I've got estimates as low as 3% and as high as 40%. I give the 40% out, but I don't think we know. And our Constitution, and the institutions that it bred, and the Bill of Rights that followed the Constitution, and the concerns of the forefathers were such that they were worried about any president getting too much power. They were worried that a free press would be attacked. They worried that we would not have a system of checks and balances. And they were right to worry, because here's my submission. And this is for those of you who want what Bernie would do, if indeed Bernie's elected, and I hope he is not, regardless of how he gets there. Or for those who feel never Trump, regardless of how you get there. Or the way Donald Trump has behaved since he's been in office. And he's done so successfully. How do I measure success in this context? He continues now. He's doing well in the polls. He's likely to be the next president. And he attacks every institution we have. Now, it has been suggested, first by myself and others, that I'm naive, that it's always been about that. It's always been about the ends justify the means, whether it was Obama only having Democratic votes that brought you Obamacare, or the judge who never got a chance to run for office, or rather to run for the Supreme Court, because he, and it was all fair, by the way, it was all fair because the Republicans were in charge. So he never got a chance to run for the position, never got a chance even to be vetted. But at least those were by the rules. Anyway, let me cut to the chase. I think we need a new flag. I think that the flag that we ran has become obsolete. And those of you that claim the flag as your own, if you don't really understand what a Republican form of government is, which is to say we are not a direct democracy, we are not a parliamentary democracy, which one of our pundits suggested President Trump has made us much closer to. We are entering a time when America has changed so profoundly that it is all about the ends justify the means. So for those people that run around up here in the north and down in the south and put their flags out, or they put it out because Bernie's running, or they put it out because the president is winning, what does that flag really mean to you? Does it mean that your vision of America, because it's not about yours or my vision of America. If you want Bernie no matter what, it's about your vision of America where a lot of stuff is free that could bankrupt the country, or where we have no borders. Is your vision of America a president who so wants to punish the people that disagree with him and so much wants to win that he pardons people who lied for him? That he pardons people who clearly broke the law? That he attacks fellow Republicans for having brought false charges against him in his view, or at least in his vision of the world? But he is winning. Now, if your vision of America is about winning, if your vision of America is totally all the way to the right or all the way to the left and only about winning, we need a new flag. And that's as balanced as I can be. Now, let me put my cards on the table. My cards on the table are, let's take even immigration. It took me a long time to come around to the president taking a firm stand. I don't agree with everything he's done. It's probably not necessary to actually build a wall. But he was elected by people who really care about that, who cared about that part of America, which is breaking the law. Although that's because that suited what they wanted. They didn't mind when he broke the law, even though he didn't get impeached or removed from office for it. They didn't mind when he broke the law because it suited them. So where we're at in my view, America needs a new flag because unless we can get back to checks and balances. Now, I'm always asked this. I could put a list together of the things the president's done on an almost daily basis, okay, that are probably un-American. But yet, they suit those who wrap themselves in the flag and say, I'm an American. Which isn't. And if you elect Bernie, by the way, you're going to do the same thing. I just don't know that he's as mean-spirited, but he certainly, and may well even be more extreme, by the way. And that's something I don't think I've said. There was a piece yesterday by David Brooks in the New York Times. One of the things that the current president gets overlooked for is that he got a lot of Democratic voters. He got a lot of Democratic voters who voted for President Obama because they wanted something different. He got a lot of Democratic voters whose unions are not delivering for them what they used to deliver. He got a lot of Democratic voters who were concerned about immigration because it was lowering the value of their paychecks. So even he, as divisive as he can be, was not absolute. In fact, you know how absolute he wasn't in a party that is generally dogmatic about the economy. It's the opinion of economists. I'm not qualified to tell you if he put our economy at risk, but we got a huge deficit now, much bigger deficit than we had when he came into office. So, my point, I am one of those poor human beings who doesn't want to see Trump reelected and who certainly doesn't want to see Bernie Sanders elected because Bernie is doctrinaire. Bernie doesn't have halfway steps. Bernie doesn't have moderating views. There was a time that he did. When he ran the last time, he did. But not now. He even had some, believe it or not, moderate views regarding immigration that didn't involve taking down borders. So there are those who are going to want to call me and say, who are you going to vote for? My God, I don't know. I don't know. Now, I'm tempted to look at my American flag and say, hey, it's all about winning. It's all about getting what I want. And for the longest time, I wanted the president out of office, but not at the price of Bernie. Maybe I will. I don't know. But what I do know is that the Americans, Republican and Democrat, because we are all Americans, it's the flag that means something different now. Either you want, and when I say the country back, I'm not saying all white middle class people with those values. I'm not saying a multi-diverse society with a different set of values. I'm talking about the process, the institution of electing representatives who will do our bidding rather than their parties, which is naive on my part, but nonetheless, who at least give it a thought, who try and put people on the Supreme Court that we won't try and vet to the point where we know how they're going to vote before they get there, that respects our law enforcement agencies on both sides. Police shouldn't be shot at, but neither should presidents be constantly harassing people in the FBI. I mean, just last week or 10 days ago, the former assistant deputy director of McCabe of the FBI was exonerated by an investigation that was commissioned by the Judge Department to look into him. Now Lindsey Graham is saying he wants to look into him again. So we have people arguably on the left who want to take a shot at police officers and who want to have protests against them. And then we have people on the right attacking investigators because they don't like what they're investigating. The dynamic's the same. So the next time you put that flag out, ask yourself what it really means. Because it no longer, well, it may stand for checks and balances. It may stand for due process. It may, when you look at that flag, you were supposed to be glad that we didn't punish people who disagreed with a leader. We were supposed to be glad that we had respect for our courts. We were supposed to be glad that that flag stood for reconciliation and for compromise. We were supposed to be glad that all were welcome here, but to be fair, make sure I say this, who get here legally. And we were formed on this basis of majority rule, minority rights. That's what our flag stood for, and that no man or woman was bigger than the law. Well, that's my spiel for today. So the next time you put that flag out, ask yourself what it really means. And go ahead and ask yourself. If you don't know, don't be embarrassed. I didn't learn it till later either, even though I majored in political science. I didn't quite understand the difference between a parliamentary democracy, which is not the worst thing in the world, and sort of where we're headed. A parliamentary democracy pretty much says when you elect the party, you're going to go along with everything that they want. And that's kind of where this president has headed us, the way he garnered his party, and maybe it was preceded by the way Obama did Obamacare. But nonetheless, that's where we are. And maybe we should just change the Constitution and go there. And I know when I was talking about this with people off air over the weekend and on Twitter, on email and different things like that, the assumption was that things were worse. Well, I think they're worse, but that's not the most important part. Okay, and I think we're worse because of the absolute total fake stories that are put out there, the rejection of true stories, the ability to create a false narrative and say, hey, if we do the false narrative and we talk about that we're equal, that's fair. The same way the idiots that believe in creationism want to teach it in schools because, well, we should teach creationism because that makes it fair when you talk about evolution. Or as someone put it very wisely once, imagine if you were taking a chemistry course and now someone said, well, you're taking a chemistry course, but now we have to look at the vibes in crystals and and some other mysterious thing. Or you're taking an astronomy course and then they said, let's keep it balanced. You want to have an astrology course. That part I can't accept. And that is something that I believe, in my own opinion, that this administration has done more than any other in the history of the Republic. Because their ends, and who knows, maybe their ends are appropriate. Maybe their ends are where the country wants to go. And in a democracy, how do we do that? As long as it gets you where you're going, Again, the theme of this monologue is, here in America now, the ends justify the means. So what does our flag stand for? It doesn't stand for what it used to. And a president that a lot of people like probably doesn't really understand what it is either. And the top dog on the other side, Bernie Sanders, I think he understands what it means and doesn't care. All righty, it is 7:10. The phone, we just got a call. We have a guest coming on in just a couple of moments, but we also have to share the weather with you because that's what we do. And as you know, and why aren't you playing? Why did you stop? Who told you you could stop? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I tell you, I'm going to smash that machine. All righty. The weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. What we have is a beautiful day. It's 41 degrees already. It's going to get up to the mid-50s today, and we're very happy about that. Normal average high would be 41, by the way. Tonight, mostly cloudy with showers arriving after midnight, lows around 40. Tuesday, cloudy with periods of rain throughout the day, still mild but not as warm, with highs only around 50 as opposed to 60. We will take it. Wednesday, showers ending very early in the morning, clouds break for some sunshine, highs around 46. Turning a bit windy as we dry out. Thursday night, partly cloudy, a little colder, cloudy. It'll actually get down to 26 on Wednesday night, but then Thursday it will get a little bit nicer. Okay, and we are supported now as we head to the top of the hour by pluginvirtualreality.com. Dominic's Fine Cigars, the law firm of Pena & Con and Aging Issues Management. And all right, let's look at the guests for today. We'll be joined by Vince, then George Latimer. We've got a breaking story coming out of Yonkers having to do with the police and the some of the police officers whose criminal records are being released by the district attorney. That's creating quite a stir. We'll talk with Jake today. And then we'll talk with a woman by the name of Stephanie Peterson. She's going to tell you what we mentioned it earlier, this Pancake Day is all about, something to lighten the mood. And then, let's see, at 8:50, I put out the clarion call. I need a Democrat to tell me whether or not their party's going to support Bernie, whether or not they're going to rejigger the election to put him out. Because, just like Trump, and Democrats have to face this, where our system did work, or not work, depending on your point of view, but I think it worked, because unless the other party says the guy got to go, he shouldn't go. President Trump, within the system, stayed in office. Well, Bernie is getting nominated within the Democratic nominating system. Interesting, eh? And wow. Although he's getting help from the Russians now, too. They want him in office. That's pretty clear. You could be a huge Trump fan, and even if you want to gloat about it, you should. Hey, even the Russians want our boy elected, and they're going to help get Bernie elected so we win. From the standpoint of spiking the ball, good for you. From the standpoint of democracy, and I go all the way back to Barack Obama when he didn't do anything about it, what a shame that we were intimidated by the Russians. Barack was intimidated by them, chicken hawk, and the current president, welcomed it. So between the two of them, choose your poison. And then we'll talk with Bob Cox at 9 o'clock. And by the way, Mitch was the Democratic operative, admittedly so. That's why he's on, to tell us what the Democrats think about Bernie. All right, let's see who's on the phone. Good morning. You're on Radio Westchester.
Good morning, Bob. It's Vince Russo.
Good morning, Vince. Did you fly your flag today?
I have my flag out all the time.
And what does it mean to you?
Well, it means that it means that we have a democracy here, a representative democracy, that is supposed to be for the benefit of all of our citizens.
Not just the winners?
Well, no. See, Bob, I don't know if I want to say solution, but my take on this is the one thing we urgently need is term limits. we can't have somebody like Mitch McConnell in the Senate for however long years just blocking up everything. And I think if we had term limits, you would get people who weren't afraid to actually do things and weren't afraid to compromise and weren't afraid to
that's on both sides. And that's on both sides.
On both sides,
sure,
yeah.
yes.
And weren't afraid to move the country forward by looking at policies that would benefit the nation as a whole, because they wouldn't have to worry about getting reelected. You know, we would have. I think the Senate should be, 2 6-year terms, which is a long time anyway. 12 years is quite a while. Mm-hmm. And the House of Representatives 2-year term is ridiculous, because as soon as they get elected, the first thing
those are ridiculous. Totally ridiculous.
Again.
They should be 4-year terms.
2 4-year terms, or maybe 1 6-year term, and the Senate have 1, I don't know, 8-year term or something.
That backfired in California. A lot of the expensive problems they have in California were liberals going hog wild, spending, and didn't have to be around for the for the aftermath. That was one of the downsides of that. But yeah, I move more and more in the direction of term limits myself.
It was that article with David Brooks was very revealing, because
I referenced it today.
I know, I heard, and I think what he's done there in that article is point out why Trump and Sanders are the presumptive nominees, because the middle ground people, Buttigieg and Joe Biden and Amy Klobuchar for the Democrats, and nobody for the Republicans, has no rallying point. To say, well, I'm a moderate, I'm going to look at things. There's no focus of the energy. And Bernie has done that by condemning everybody who possibly has made any kind of money in their life. And Trump, of course, has done it by condemning, immigration and, all of the other liberal things. So I think,
although Trump has won, the article also pointed out, and much to my chagrin, but I had, it was true. He brought a lot of the people along who voted for Obama the first time, and a lot of the people who feel that the country's not doing for them what it's supposed to do. Where Bernie doesn't seem to want to do that. Bernie doesn't want to reach out to anybody in the middle.
Well, he wants to just blow up the country, he claims, which will benefit the middle. I'm not exactly sure how I see that playing out. I think the one good thing that these primaries have done is hopefully make Elizabeth Warren irrelevant.
She sticks in your craw. Mine too, but still.
Oh, I think she's just a wingnut. And Bernie's a wingnut too. I think that all of this stuff. It's interesting. There was an article. Well, not an article. Bernie was saying, he's got this broad support. I've got minorities. I got millennials. I got these. Of course. He wants to give everybody.
You do a very good imitation of Bernie, by the way.
Well, he wants to give everybody else's money to these people, so of course they're going to support him. All of this business about, not only free tuition but forgiving student debt, and all of these really extreme left-wing policies. Of course, people are going to support him. Hey, you know what? If somebody came to me and said, "I'm going to take a chunk of somebody else's money and give it to you," I'd say, yeah, sure, fine, I'll take it. So I don't see how he's going to possibly win. It's just baffling to me. And I think one of the things, if the Republicans don't use the soundbite from Michael Bloomberg the other night, where he said to Bernie, that's already been tried in other countries. It's called communism. If they don't use that over and over and over again, they're crazy. Because I think what Bloomberg has done was moved in people's minds, at least, Bernie from the realm of socialism, which they don't quite understand what that is, to the dreaded C word. I mean, the average Joe is going to say, yeah, that's right, he's a communist, just like that Obama. And I don't see him having a prayer as winning. I could be way off base, but I don't see it. And just like you, I'm not sure if Trump is the better alternative to him. Now, it's going to be hard for me to cast my vote for Trump, but I don't know. It's really a conundrum. We're going to be in another situation where we have two god awful presidential candidates, and part of it is the fault of the system, because who said that only the Democrats and the Republicans can put up a presidential candidate? Now, people will come to me and they'll say, hey, you know what? Third parties can nominate candidates if they want. Yes, but the system is rigged in favor of both of the major parties. It does not support in any shape, form, or regard how a third party or a fourth party or a fifth party candidate can be viable. The biggest thing we could do in that regard is to eliminate all private funding for campaigns. That we have public funding. If you reach certain thresholds, you get money, and we could have people, from other points of view being a candidate. And like you said before, I am not totally against the parliamentary system. I think that a parliamentary system forces coalitions and forces parties to work together because they don't have the majority. There also must be some way we can force the parties in power to do something. They say, and depending on who you talk to, I don't know the exact number, they say there's something like 400 bills on Mitch McConnell's desk that he just refuses to pass through, that he refuses to let it even be considered in the Senate. And both sides do that kind of stuff, and it's awful. So I'm not sure what the future of our representative democracy is. To me, it's very bleak.
Well, it is certainly on either side. It is 7:23. Just wanted to go to some of the couple of sports. Did you hear anything yet? And I'm actually putting this out there. Did you hear anything yet about the Kreider trade or the Kreider transaction? Do you know anything about
he
that?
got traded?
No, but the thing is that he didn't get signed, and all the newspapers this morning are saying he may very well go.
Well, no. The other feel-good story is the Zamboni driver in Toronto who played for the Hurricanes.
Oh, okay. Yes, yeah, I did that. So, hey, listen, I just got a text, and yeah, I did. I just got a text that people were getting a double feed, and I changed it. Did you get two feeds of the show? Did you get an old show and a new show?
No.
Okay.
I'm on.
You're on. Yeah, that's Radio Jar. For those people who've been listening on Radio Jar. Okay, I did fix it. That's one of the things we don't advertise, but we should have. Damn it.
No, I'm on YouTube, and everything looks good
No,
there.
because what happens is then I lose
Everything
listeners.
looks good there, except that I see you.
No, but what happens is then I lose listeners. And I just got one text saying, well, I'm going to listen to another station until you get it right. And they're right. Anyhow, so I don't know. I don't know where we're going. Now, let's get to the heart of the matter. Do you think Bernie can win?
No, I don't think Bernie can win at all. I think that, the Republicans are going to use the word socialist, every other word when they talk about him. The American public has no clue what socialism is or what that means. And I think that that's going to be a huge problem for Bernie. And I think that his policies are going to be a huge problem for him. They're just unrealistic. And people are going to say, well, you want to forgive all the student debt. You want to pay for everybody's college. You want to give all these immigrants money. You want to do health care, single-payer health care. the question remains is how, even if you like those policies, and I think some of them actually are good, how are you going to pay for it? And, well, we're going to tax these millionaires. Oh, and Wall Street.
All right, calm down.
We're going to go after Wall Street. Like, what the hell does that mean? And
I don't know.
People are going to say, yeah, I know what's going to happen. My taxes are going to go through the ceiling. And, the one thing that Bernie doesn't point out, and you could understand why, he says, even in Sweden, they got better health care, blah, blah, blah. What Bernie doesn't point out is that all of Europe that has, quote, socialized medicine, it is good, but he doesn't tell you that the taxes in Europe are astronomical.
No, he doesn't. The thing is, and again, he is absolutist. Now, I just don't know how you can possibly govern if you're absolutist. He's going to have to just, make Trump look like the Easter Bunny. It is beyond me. But nonetheless, that seems to be the way we are going, my friend.
Yeah, it is. And unfortunately, the people in the middle, like Buttigieg, like Klobuchar, and like Joe Biden, aren't gaining traction because, like David Brooks says, they don't have this rallying cry. They don't have this myth, as David said, to rally their supporters around. All that they have is just good centrist, common sense approaches to the way that they want to handle these tough issues that we're facing. Buttigieg keeps saying, I don't have any problem with a single payer system as long as it's an option that people have where they can keep their current health care if they like it, or if they can, or there'll be the option of Medicare as an alternative. Why does it have to be one or the other? The other thing that Bernie doesn't address is he wants to do away with the whole healthcare industry.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do with the million or so people who work in that industry? What are they going to do? Oh, they'll find a better high-paying job.
Yeah, I guess.
What are you talking about?
Well, this is where we're headed. Now, before I let you go, do you see? I'm still in the Bloomberg camp, but boy, did he get his butt kicked! Unbelievably so.
He was awful. He was awful. I mean, and the one thing I got to give Bernie credit is that no matter what the question is, he gives the same answer. He will say, they'll say, well, what do you think about flying to the moon? And he'll say, I think it's a great idea, and universal health care is a right. It is not a privilege. No, he is always on message and always keeps repeating the same thing over and over and over and over again.
Well, if we keep buying it, who's this on? Is that on us or him?
Well, no, I think he's right in doing that in terms of the campaign, and Elizabeth Warren does that too. What Bloomberg needs to do is just pivot away from, because none of them ever answer the questions that are put to them. Just pivot away from it, and put your campaign, your stump speech stuff out there. Michael's, he's a very smart man, but boy, oh boy, and he's got no personality.
I wouldn't rule him out yet, though. I wouldn't rule him out yet.
Well, I don't rule him out. I mean, I think that, there's still a ways to go. Joe's not out of it by any means. I think Elizabeth Warren is. And Klobuchar's hanging on for the vice president spot. And unfortunately, Pete Buttigieg, who I think is the most reasonable of the bunch, he's going to kind of limp along in third place.
Yeah, I just don't want another kid.
Well, right. I don't know why. I mean, you think anybody else has been...
because there's so much you got to have experience for. Mayor Noam Bramson here in town is a big supporter of his, too, because of the guy's intellect. But there's a lot that needs to go into the job. I don't know. Like I said, I like the guy a lot, Buttigieg. I think he should come back in 10 years after he runs something big. I've run places at Merrill Lynch bigger than his town, for God's sakes. Listen, my friend, we've got to go. I've got to I'm really compressed schedule today. So thank you very, very much, and I'll talk to you very soon, Mr. Buttigieg.
Talk to you tomorrow, Bob.
All right,
Thank
take
you.
care. That's Vince Russo. It is 7:30. Jake, we're going to invite you on a little early. Come to the seat of honor. We've got a real jammed up schedule today because of all the news, and I wanted to say good morning to you. I was wondering how you made out. Now, the reason we wanted Jake on early is he also went to a, I guess,
memorabilia show in Westchester.
Is that what it's called? How was it? Was it as good as you thought it was going to be?
It was a lot of fun. You get to meet some interesting characters.
Who did you meet?
Didn't really meet anyone famous. It's just fun to look around and see all the different people. The thing that really stood out to me was, I told you, Tim Witherspoon, the former heavyweight champion.
Oh, he was there?
He was there, and I was just hypnotized just by his hands. His hands are, I have small hands, but his hands are three of my height.
How would you like one of those fists in your nose?
Oh, I couldn't. That's exactly what I was saying. I was just watching him sign autographs and just couldn't stop staring at his hands.
You've got your Utica Comets hat on. I like that comet. They used to be called the Clinton Comet. I don't know why. Anyway, I digress.
I tried a new place on the way home in White Plains, the Utica Pizza Kitchen.
Utica Pizza Kitchen?
So anyone familiar with the upstate area knows that Utica does pizzas their own. They have their own special recipe for pizzas. They do Utica greens, chicken riggies. So if anyone is a fan of that kind of a recipe, I highly recommend it.
Okay, well, thank you for that. You know, I did pretty good in my picks the other day. I don't know if you had a chance to look at them, or we'll look at them again later. But
We didn't make picks on Friday.
I thought I did make picks.
No.
Oh, no, today we make the picks.
Today we make the picks.
Oh,
No,
wow.
you are in your contest with our intern Nick. You are 8-5. He's 9-4, but you were 5-2. The last picks we took.
Oh, we don't have his results yet.
No,
So
no.
5-2.
We're just. These are the up-to-date results. These are the last picks we did. Were
So what
Thursday
are we
night
now?
game. Thursday night's games.
So what is my record now?
8-5 versus 9-4.
9-4. Well, we are running neck and neck. Geez, I did really well yesterday. I think I only lost one game.
Well, you should have texted me your picks.
No, I wouldn't. No, that's okay. No, because we didn't do the young boys yet. If you want, we can do them right now, and then a little later on in the show we'll talk about them again too. But before we do, we can do that later. I wanted to get your take. Did you see Cespedes is finally in the news today? But he said nothing. Now I got an analogy for you. My listeners aren't going to like it, but I do. A lot of people want to know, okay, why this issue doesn't go away.
Cespedes?
No, the issue of the cheating.
Yeah, I was thinking about. I'm gonna try do our first station poll. I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna poll 10, 20 people.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask them, do they think the Astros should be stripped of their World Series title? I asked 10 people. How many people will say yes? How many people will say no? We'll do a little scientific.
We should. Well, I think it's the same dynamic that went on, you know, when why people kept after the president and why people kept after some of the things that he did. I think that people just don't like it. And can't stand it when they see one thing and they hear another coming from another person. I think it drives them nuts. It certainly drives me nuts. What surprises me, though, is I thought the players would be a little more mum at this point. That they don't want it to show in their own backyard. Now the Yankees, in one of the stories that came out over the weekend, admitted to doing an awful lot with video, but stopping short of real time.
And did you see the whistleblower pitched last night or yesterday for the Athletics in a spring training game, and he got a standing ovation.
He did get a standing ovation
coming
rather
off
than
the
booed?
mound. Standing ovation from the crowd.
Well, it's a good thing he isn't a whistleblower in the United States. If he did, he would be threatened by the president.
Whistleblower Mike Fiers, decent pitcher for the Oakland Athletics.
Although I do believe in honor among thieves. I don't know that I've ever said that. If you're a part of a cabal, if you say that you're in somebody's corner, if you both know you're breaking the rules and you have vowed not to break that, people don't like rats either. The question is,
Well, look at how the Astros have handled their apology tour.
Terrible.
No contrition whatsoever.
No, absolutely none. All right, I think I should be hearing from, so a little later in the program,
All right,
we'll go
I'll
over
do,
Bob's picks.
All right, and I'll go give you the results of our poll. So you think it'll be 50-50? You think it'll be heavy? Strip the title? Let it be?
Yes, I do.
All right, so I'll be back with the results, and we'll
So
take
you
your
would,
picks.
well, you said it really early on. You think they should strip the title. More and more people are saying that they should. All righty, folks. This is Radio Westchester. We've got to get ready for the county executive first. This, and again, some of you who are listening on Radio Jaw, we understand that you were getting 2 shows. Boy, sorry, we got to work the bugs out. They'll like this. Get in contact with you, the Mayor Sean Patterson Howard. Oh, I would love to. All righty. We will do that. We just got a text. Sean Patterson Howard's trying to come on. I can't wait to get her on the radio. This is the one and only Radio Westchester. Stay right there. We'll be back. All righty. As we move ahead, it is 7:36, and once again, he's with us each and every Monday. We're happy to have the county executive with us. Please welcome County Executive George Latimer. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Bob. How are you this morning?
Well, it's a nice day in the neighborhood, although I have been so angry at myself. I forgot to press a button, and I had 2 shows going on at once. We were on like 8 outlets, but one of them. And so I'm still smacking myself in the
Brother,
back
we
of the
all
head.
make mistakes.
Yeah,
We all
well,
make mistakes.
and I was so proud of my monologue too. But you know how that is. Number, there's so many different things going on. I know, and health seems to be at the forefront. We saw I guess a press release the other day about hepatitis confirmed in an employee at a factory event. Is that any real problem, or is that all just put to bed right now?
Well, it's being handled. That issue is being handled by our health department. Dr. Shalita Emler is working overtime these days. The coronavirus issue falls within her scope, and this concern about an employee who had hepatitis at a catered function at a facility, converted old factory up in Peekskill. It is a restaurant element to the complex, Spin and Brew. Then there's a separate catering, hall room that was used for a function, and this individual tested, and so the guests of that event have all been reached out to and are tested. I don't know the status of any of the other guests of the event, but the issue is fairly confined. It's not an outbreak that's wasn't trackable back to an individual. No, at this point in time, the issue is under control. If there's any reason to think it's not, then I'll certainly will be forthright in any press updates.
Okay, I just thought that I would mention it because I saw that it was out there. Anything, we seem to be in pretty decent shape in the county regarding the coronavirus. It seems to be spreading in different countries overseas, Italy, Iran, for just to name a couple, and of course it's now running rampant in China. Any news on that front, sir?
Well, nothing more than that we have 26 individuals that are being observed for. We think the first of the individuals that we identify has now reached the end of the incubation period, and I believe has shown no signs, which is good news. And then we'll see if that happens to be the case for the other 25 individuals in the sequence by which they were quarantined. Only a fool would say, Bob, that everything is under control when it comes to something of this nature. It is a worldwide situation. We're one county within a world that's, huge. To the extent that we know what the scope of it is in Westchester, we feel like we have a handle on it. But, the mobility of Americans, and particularly Westchester people, because of their work and their family connections and so forth, people from this area travel all over the world, all over the country. And you can't be sure that, you've got your handle on anything until it's absolutely resolved and behind you. But, again, I think in this case, What we know, we think we've handled well, and we hope that that is the extent. But, we're not assuming that everything is hunky-dory. We're just going to keep vigilant and be prepared if another case manifests itself.
Okay. We saw, everybody's been following the budget lately. The governor's had a lot to say. Today there were stories about the old tax rebate is gone. Any word yet on that? People are very concerned that this issue with Medicaid is going to hit us between the eyes.
Well, we're all concerned about it. All of the decision makers at the county government, not just in Westchester, but all the county governments are concerned about it. If the final budget that gets adopted by the legislature will include whatever the final results are. So we're not really going to know what's going to happen until April 1st or whenever the budget is adopted, which generally is around April 1st now. We've long since, passed the late budget routines. That used to be the case 15, 20 years ago. The next step in the game is each of the two houses, the Assembly and the Senate, will pass one-house budgets or one-house resolutions in which they will argue for changes in the budget that they would vote for as a house. And that's coming up, in the next, the first week of March, second week, by then or so. What happens at that point is if certain things are in those one-house budgets and the Assembly and the Senate both agree to change language on Medicaid and or other things that affect us financially, then we know what their negotiating stance is going to be. But then that's when you get to the three men in a room scenario, and of course one of them's a woman now, Mr. Cousins. That's when the governor's representatives, the Senate, and the Assembly people who do the negotiating, some senior members and staff, they will then meet to try to harmonize the two one-house budgets and the governor's original proposal. And that's likely to be what happens starting. And some of the dialogue begins this week. I think most of it will begin next week. And we'll know sometime by the end of March, early April. Now, in anticipation of that, we've communicated with department heads and with some of the people we contract with and just said, hold off making any major commitments, even if they were budgeted, because we don't know if the final resolution will create a mid-year budget crisis. We balanced the budget. I thought we all did a good job this year getting it to the point where we could both cut taxes and maintain services. But it was predicated on knowing what our expenses were. If our expenses jump up by $5 million, $10 million, $15 million, or $20 million because of the impact of the mandate, then then we have to come back with a plan to absorb those costs, and they'll be mandated. So we're not going to be able to say no, we don't want to pay them.
Well, of course not.
And depending on the size and scope of the mid-year impact, then we'll know what happens. Now that doesn't affect people's property taxes. The property tax levy, the cut, that's locked in. What will happen though is in a mid-year situation, in the worst case scenario, you have layoffs, diminution of services. I don't think we'll get that far, but then the decisions made will also affect next year's budget. And when we sit down in next year's budget, I made commitments about freezing property taxes and doing other things. We'll have to see what kind of a hit this is. Unexpected hit. If it is 20, 30 million, that's a significant amount of money. But we don't know. And so there's, the conjecture is just to give you a framework of what we're facing. And then we have to go do our job diligently.
We're talking with County Executive George Latimer here. We do each and every Monday here on Radio Westchester. How does that get integrated? By what time will the governor have had to give municipalities the bad news? And then how does that get worked in? Is it get worked in like by June or is it something that gets done by April? How does that happen?
It depends. Look, it depends on what they do. The state budget year starts April 1st and ends next March 30th. So they're 1 quarter off of the county budget. The county budget started January 1st. We end December 31st. If there's a shift of obligation from the state to the county, and it hits us and they implement it as of any time between now and December 31st, that's a hit to our current budget. They could, in theory, implement the changes effective January 1 of next year, which means that this year's budget isn't affected, but when we start sitting down to work next year's budget, which will start happening in the summertime, which is still a few months away, then we'll know that we have this much more expense that we have to somehow absorb, and that becomes a problem for next year's budget, next year's taxation, and so forth. But it will, in theory, what happens in the budget when it's finalized on April 1st will tell us the implementation date. And it's at that point in time that we'll know whether or not we have a crisis for 2020 or if this is a hit that's going to hit us in 2021. Now, just because we get a hit and it's not this year, it doesn't mean it's good.
No, I understand that. I do understand that.
within a year.
I just wanted to give people a sense for what it was. What's going on in your world? What do you want to shout out about today, County Executive?
Well, a lot of different things. We hope to impanel our group, hopefully by the end of this week, that's going to look at the Bronx River Parkway wrong-way driving improvements. We made the announcement a week ago that we were going to tackle that. We have finalized two of the neighborhood association members of that group, Stacy Fisher, who's head of the Hartsdale Neighborhood Association, Greenberg, and Steve Wagner, who's head of the Armavilla Association in Yonkers. They've agreed to join the task force. We want the task force to get cracked and get working. We think that will be something that we're working on right now. We mentioned that we're reassessing the policy of allowing events, primarily circuses, into the county center that have wild and exotic animals, things like lions and tigers and so forth. We're going through the process of reassessment. We're looking at what some other jurisdictions who have done some sorts of restrictions have done. You may know that the state passed a law eliminating elephants from those kind of things, but there are still other animals that are not, normally domesticated animals that, perform, under certain circumstances. Now, there's some people who are animal activists. They want no animals at all. They don't want horses. They don't want dogs, etc. My proposal deals with the possibility of an executive order, but an executive order is in force as long as, I choose for it to be, and I believe the Board of Legislators is going to look at wide-reaching legislation. And if legislation comes to pass, then that locks in these provisions to law. It's not just a whim of myself or any future county executive. So that process is going to play out over the next week to 2 weeks. We'll do some research, and then we'll announce whatever our understanding is. And as I said, we'll put an executive order in. There'll be some work on that this week. We're gearing up for Census 2020. That's an ongoing expectation. We're a little concerned that now there's scam groups out there.
Yeah, we saw that.
Things to people's houses, trying to sell them things or do political things and tie it into census registration. It's going to confuse people, and we're going to have to be very diligent trying to bat this down as part of the Census 2020 effort. We've completed our initial meetings with all of the municipalities on our affordable housing study. You may remember we released it in November. It outlined certain priorities that we had to tackle, and just this past week we finished our last round of meetings. And so now we're going through a period of about 30, 60 days where each of the localities in the county, the local officials, are discussing where they can go, and then we're going to start working with them on different sites for affordable housing and different developers, seeing what we can do to add to the mix of affordable housing, both for seniors as well as for families. That's on our burner as it stands now. And everyday scenarios. We're administering the best of our ability the new criminal justice reform. We hear there's a movement to change to modify or fix the bills that passed last year.
Yeah, people are really calling for that.
Yeah, and I think right now, our mission in Westchester County is to make sure that we don't have somebody who gets off the hook because of a technicality. We've been through the jail side and the bail side already, so that action is behind us. And we're tracking all the people that the law affected who are in our county jails, trying to make sure they all showed up at their following judicial hearing at the local level, which is what bail is meant to do, is meant to make sure that you show up at the court the next time, and we're tracking those. There's no doubt of fear that there'll be an incident, an horrific incident. The fear is such that if it happens anywhere in the state, it applies to everywhere in the state. But we just don't want that incident to happen in Westchester. We want to try to administer this as best as we can, and then if the rules get reformed, they get reformed and made better, and that's we'll go with whatever the flow is on that.
7:49. Again, we're with our weekly visit with County Executive George Latimer here on Radio Westchester. Just want to go back. The issue of one-way accidents. Some of that, or at least on the very surface of it, seems to be the way our roads were designed a long time ago. A lot of entrance and exit ramps very close to each other. Um, I would think that there's only a limited number of things you could do about that.
Well, we've divided the tasks, we think, into three different categories.
Go ahead.
The first one is signage. And I myself can tell you that as I drive around the county, and I pretty much drive myself most of the time.
I know.
I see any number of places where additional signage would make it more clear where is the entrance and to something and where is the exit. As you point out, the parkway system in Westchester County was built beginning of the 1920s, and they never envisioned this kind of traffic commutation day after day like this. But the signage is something that we can do on the Bronx River Parkway. We own the Bronx River Parkway. We maintain it. That's why we're doing the task force on the Bronx River. The Bronx River did not have a wrong-way driver recently, but other parkways have. The interstate has. So we figured let's deal with our own road first, and if we can figure out how to solve it, then that could become a template for the way the state goes. Now, signage is number one. Number two could be lighting, and it could be general lighting, or it could be lighting of the signs. Because when you drive at night in the rain, you're not familiar with an area. The signage may or may not be adequate, but sometimes you can't see well enough because the lighting isn't that good, and that's something that we could, in theory, deal with. Lighting will take a little more time; it'll be a little more expensive than signage. And then the third and the final element would be recommendations for capital projects that would alter or change an exit or an entrance that would make it, better. You rightly point out that in some of these places there's no space for an exit or an entrance that's properly structured.
Right.
It's like a driveway street that gets you onto the Bronx.
Yeah, and then and sometimes it follows after you've just made a turn, and it's like, whoops.
Right.
Well, it's going. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
There's that element of it, but I'm just saying, again, the Bronx River is not the worst or the only case of it. I think the Hutch and the Sawmill, to some extent, the Cross County, all have the same problems. But we'll try to be rational. We'll try to make some positive improvements. If we can do that, then we open up the door for, additional improvements on some of the other roads via the state, because it's the state that owns and operates the Hutch, the Cross County, the Sawmill, and then, of course, the Thruway and 287.
I know. I know. A couple of weeks ago, the governor came out talking about a study for trucks hitting bridges, and I was saying to myself, the county already is dealing with that. I guess it doesn't hurt to have the governor looking into it as well, but that's not really is that in their purview to look at that?
Well, yes, because those roadways are state roadways.
Okay, so they are
First
state
of all,
roadways.
The state has been a partner. Right, the state has been a big partner with us in the improvements that have been made. I mean, that we reached out to the state because it's their authority to do these things, and they put a significant amount of money in. And we attribute the drop on King Street to a partnership that the state and the county together have worked on. Now, we hope that stays the case. But keep in mind that this is a statewide issue. We see it in Westchester because of the roads that we travel on. But if you travel around Long Island, the Northern State Parkway, the Southern State Parkway, same thing, same problems. The Palisades Parkway, which is over in Rockland County, you have some of the same issues, not quite to the same degree, but it too is a parkway. And when you look at the Taconic travels significantly north through lots of different communities, and there are parts of the Taconic that have the same issues. So it is a statewide problem. I think that what matters most is that we took it on as something that we felt was important. I had dealt with it when I was in the state legislature. Obviously, legislators they advocate for things. We don't have the ability to just say, do this, and it gets done. But it's been an issue, I think, on the minds of people in this area for a while. But, it doesn't affect everybody. If somebody is, listening in from Mount Vernon, they may not worry a whole lot about what happens on the Hutch Bridge and King Street and Rye Brook. It's not their world. So everybody has their own priorities, and that's why when you step back and you look at the overall picture of county government, there's so many different working parts to it. And even if we get something done, I'll give you an example. This past week, we got the word that Connecticut was dropping their consideration for tolls on I-684. That was a victory. That was something that we lobbied against right away. We didn't waste any time. We came out strongly for it. That primarily benefits the people who travel and or the trucks and businesses that travel between White Plains and Armonk and Bedford. And as I said, if you live in another part of the county, that may not mean much to you, but that was a little victory. Now, you get a little victory at King Street, a little victory in Armonk, get a little victory with the CDBG program being reestablished. Rochelle Family Court victory. You fix the Miller House in North Castle. You open up some pools in Yonkers. No one of those things is enough for you to have a parade and say, "Oh, look at us, we're so good." Look, but when you get the body of work together and you accumulate it, you add it up, then you can say, you know what, they're trying. They're working on a host of different things. They're making some progress. Some things aren't where they should be. Nobody's perfect. Lord knows I'm not perfect, but I'm trying every day. And if we make progress, we make progress and treat it as such.
Okay. Anything else before I send you on your way?
No, I think that does it for now. This is the last week of February. Hard to believe we're going to be in the month of March by the time we speak again. So time advances fast.
Well, thank you very much, County Executive, and we'll talk to you again next week. It is, let us look at the time. It is 7:56 and some 22 seconds, and we've got some. Jake's going to put me on the spot. This is what we do. And so Jake is back in the wheelhouse. Jake, good morning, good morning, good morning, as my friend A.J. Woodson likes to say. Coming up, by the way, we've got a breaking story shortly after 8 o'clock with the folks from the Yonkers Tribune, that, of course, Hezi Harris, and then we'll be talking with Stephanie Peterson from IHOP, believe it or not. Mitch is going to be Bernie's man today, see what he says about that. And all righty, let's get to cases. Good morning, Jake. How are you today?
Nice to see you again.
Always nice to see you again. All righty, it's time to
very
hold
small slate today.
me accountable.
Very small slate today,
Well,
so maybe
talk
you
to
can
me.
give us some
And then I had another
analysis
question
of this
for you.
game.
Go ahead.
It's one game tonight.
Just one game?
Just one game tonight. So maybe we'll roll tonight and tomorrow night into one.
Okay,
big
but let's do
result.
tonight's game anyway.
The Blue Jackets, big favorites at home against the Senators.
Oh, I go to the Jacks. They shouldn't be big favorite. Everybody's out. Everybody's hurt but the coach.
They are 18 to 21 favorites.
Do they have tomorrow's games listed yet?
They do not.
Oh, okay. Because I would go there. All right. I was writing some notes to talk with you about this. And did you watch any more of the XFL?
Did not get a chance to watch. I watched a little bit of the New York game yesterday, but I was kind of out and about this weekend.
Do you know how they did attendance-wise or viewership or anything like that?
The numbers come out later today.
The numbers come out later today?
Yeah, I'll check them out then.
All right, well, that should be the case. Now, I wanted to go back just to the sign stealing issue that doesn't go away. Where do you see this headed, Jake?
Well, let's see what happens with the Red Sox. I don't know why they keep pushing back the punishment for the Red Sox. See what that report says and see what their punishments are. See if they were as complicated and devious as the Astros were in their sign stealing.
My gut is it probably isn't, or it'd be out already.
Yeah, I have no idea why they haven't. I think they'd want to put it out and get it over with.
I got a gut feel, and after I saw that thing with the Yankees, that they go back and forth in the clubhouse, and they go back and forth and look and see if they can figure out the signs. It's just not real time. Do you know, that is a line, but that is a thin line. That is really a thin line. It's not orchestrated. It's not orchestrated in a way where it's quid pro quo right at that moment, if you will. But I think that I think that's why some players don't think it's any big deal, and some players have said that.
I think that's probably 60-40. It's probably the majority don't think it's that big of a deal, and that's why most of them were quiet.
Yeah, because they probably do it too.
They're upset about it, but they kept it quiet.
Are they upset about it getting out, or they upset about, or are they upset about the fact that other guys did it? See, I just think they're upset about it that it got out. A lot of them. See, I don't trust pro sports anymore. It's kind of my monologue today was based on that. You know,
and the Astros were, so they had such a nice run with their scheme. They have a World Series championship. They went to the 7th game last year. So,
see, I thought they should have started pointing fingers. I think that would have been a very valuable thing. Oops, turn that off. I think it would have been a very, very valuable thing. So, all righty. I've got to get ready for our next guest. He should be calling. Jake, anything you want to add this morning to our fun and games?
Well, I enjoyed the heavyweight fight on Saturday night.
Well, tell me about that fight. Anthony, fortunately, I texted him. I didn't get a chance to see it. I was dealing with a mess here that we'll talk about later.
Very brutal fight.
A very brutal fight? And tell me about the winner.
There's a lot of controversy because half the corner was upset that they threw the towel in. The experienced, aged trainer from Brooklyn, he threw in the towel. The head trainer didn't want the towel thrown in, but his fighter got hit in the ear. He was profusely bleeding from the ear.
From the ear.
So I think that points to a ruptured eardrum, and I don't know how the hell you could be in a heavyweight boxing match with a ruptured eardrum. And he looked concussed, or he was just out on his feet. He was very dazed. He couldn't get his legs, and he was taking a beating.
Now, which guy is Fury?
Fury's the big white guy.
The big white guy?
Yeah.
Okay, because I wasn't sure. I don't follow it enough. So was he in the last fight? Was he leading the last fight too? I know it was a draw.
Yeah, it was a draw. I think I didn't see the last fight, but from what I've heard, the last fight was a pretty close one.
They both looked a little fat to me.
Well, the Fury intentionally put on 20 pounds.
Why?
He wanted to. Well, during the fight, you would see whenever they got to a clinch, he would lay on him. He would use all of his weight.
So do that and take it. That saps your strength.
It took a lot out of him just trying to get the big man off of you.
Heavyweight boxing is not what it used to be.
No.
They really overplayed. It's not when you had Ali and Foreman and all
Even
those guys.
Evander Holyfield. I used to like to watch every Evander Holyfield fight.
And then a couple of the Russians were really good.
The
Klitschko's, etc. They're all retired now.
Yeah, I enjoyed the fight, and I'm sure there'll be a part 3, and I'll...
What did it cost this year?
I didn't pay. Luckily, I stumbled across a website.
No, sure. We have to talk with you about how to get to those websites. All right, then. Thank you very much. 2 visits.
I think it was over $100, but that's crazy to me.
Wow, over $100. Yeah, I'm not ready to pay that for a fight. Okay, folks, it is 8:01, and we need to move ahead. We're going to talk with Hezi Harris in just a moment. Just got to share the weather with you, and the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. 41, it's lovely out, clear skies, mainly sunny, nice with highs getting up to the mid-50s, maybe even 60 today. Tonight, mostly cloudy with showers arriving after midnight, lows around 40 degrees. Tomorrow, cloudy with periods of rain, though, throughout the day. Still mild, but not as warm as today, getting up to about 50. And as we get into Wednesday, showers ending very early in the morning. Clouds break for some sunshine, highs around 46. But Wednesday night, we've got to tell, it's going to be a little chilly. It's going to get down to 26. But then we rebound. Temperatures, as we get into Thursday, get back up to 40. And it's time for our next guest. He's been working on a story. We've covered some of the breaking aspects of it involving the district attorney and the district attorney's outing of certain police officers and law enforcement officials who have committed crimes, etc. It affects Yonkers and many other cities, but Yonkers is the purview of, it's all of Westchester. But our next guest is a specialist, and when this story broke, we got him on. Please welcome Hezi Harris. Good morning, Hezi.
Good morning, Bob. I just love that the weather report from United Hebrew in New Rochelle. I look forward to listening to that.
Well, thank you.
The best I hear anywhere.
Well, thank you.
At least it's always positive.
Well, I tried. Well, it is positive today. It's like anything else. If I said it was snow, you'd hate me. Tell us about what's going on, and why is the DA doing this, and what does it mean in a city like Yonkers?
Well, the DA is involved in cleaning up the police departments where there's been, there's a Yonkers way, as they say, and there's the New York State way. Well, the Yonkers way is corrupt, and it's been like that for maybe 20-some-odd years, maybe even longer. And enough is enough, because we've got people in the police department who've been permitted and actually exalted to the position of being permitted to perjure and be okay with that. These people don't get thrown out of the union. They're protected.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem. You can't be protecting renegade police officers. You can't be protecting police officers who pass out while they're in police precincts because they're on drugs. And we protect these people. We don't put them in a rehab center. We just put them back to work while they're on all kinds of medication to be clean, and they get paid a police officer's salary. And what do? They pick up the phone. You want some drug addict to pick up your phone when you got a problem over at the police and you need the police? Really?
Well, let me
you know how many people we hide away in places like that?
Let me ask you something. Full disclosure, I've had on the current district attorney. This coming Friday, I will have on the Mimi Roca, the challenger. How much of this is political? I know he's getting, and I even hate to say it because I think
it's political. Define what you mean.
No, I don't think it is, but I'm asking you that because Mimi Roca's camp is saying he should not have done it and it was a wrong thing to do. And
Why?
I'm asking you.
That was wrong.
I don't think he did anything
I don't find
wrong.
that. Look, she might be a credible candidate, and I'm not making a judgment call whether she should be elected or shouldn't be elected. But what I do know is that the district attorney, he's the top man of all police departments in the entire county. There's nobody higher. The point is, has he made a mistake anywhere? Has anyone been let go that shouldn't have been? Has he been protecting people in the past that should have not been protected? Well, you might look at Yonkers and say, well, how come he didn't know about this, that, or the other? That's because the police department in Yonkers doesn't give him the information that he must be privy to. They lie to him, and that's part of our exposure.
Well, say more about that and how they lied to him. Let's talk about the piece that you wrote that you sent to me.
Look, the bottom line is they don't keep him informed. Didn't the people that made the list, aren't they perjurers? Why do you think everyone's looking at the Yonkers Police Department? Because we were the ones that reported about Fogarty. He was the one that went over to the Bronx, lied about his warrant, and he thought he got away with it. Then they were sent back by the court and said, well, go prove it. And then it turned out that they didn't find the drugs on the first or second floor of a 3-story building. It was on the 3rd story. They broke in, they did what they wanted to do, and then they lied about it. And it's not a question of going after cops, but think about it. There's many ramifications. If the cop is crooked, what about the people who are being arrested and thrown into prison? What about their families that are being hurt because somebody in the police department did something wrong to them? When are they going to be exonerated? Who's paying for them? Who's protecting them? The answer is nobody. And the reason the DA is correct is he needs to get rid of this riffraff, and we shouldn't have them on our payroll.
Now,
they should be let go.
How is the Yonkers Police Department and the administration responding?
Well, the Yonkers government, this government, and the ones prior to this one, have all emboldened this person like Keith Olson, even our police commissioner. They're all the best of friends. They work together. You know what's so interesting? Keith Olson says before the court, this information shouldn't be shared. No one has a right to see that. Well, guess what? Keith Olson has told people, and this is on record, that he has the dossier on people within the police department, and he threatens them with it. But the bottom line is there's nothing to threaten them with. He just wants to get rid of them because they're honest people. He wants to get rid of those people that are honest, and he wants to keep the riffraff, which he controls. So he's the one that steals dossiers. He's the one that tells people, hey, if you want to know somebody's history, you come to me. I got their portfolio. He never got it legally. This man is a crook on the inside.
No,
he's been allowed to do that.
I noticed that.
And he's allowed to do that by the administration. And you know how he gets away with it? because he pays, through the PBA, he pays $24,000 a year to none other than Nick Spano's operation called Empire Strategic Planners. And what are they? They are the former senator's lobbying firm.
Yes.
The lobbying firm is naturally based in Albany because they do lobbying in our main house, so to speak, in Albany. But the thing is, what can a lobbyist who is the brother of the mayor conceivably do to benefit the PBA or the CLSA, who pay $12,000 a year for engaging the senator, the former senator's lobbying firm? The answer is nothing, because that's not permitted, because that's a conflict of interest. And besides that, you have to recognize that New York State lobbyists have been employed by both the Captain, Lieutenant, and Sergeants Association, the CLSA, and the Yonkers PBA, and they still have those lobbyists up there. So what the hell do they need the senator here for? And the answer is simple. If you give the senator money, then that means, and through his firm, and then what you're doing is you're buying favor with the mayor. Isn't that sweet? Talk about conflict of interest.
Now your piece,
we've been saying this for 8 years.
And now the piece, and I recommend that people go to read the entire piece, is called "The Blue Truth: Yonkers PBA Detective Keith Olson versus WCDA Anthony A. Scarpino Jr." Now, you mentioned in your column that it goes all the way back to Spencer and Amicone. Wow.
Right.
And
because
that,
it all began in those days.
And it's a completely different party as well. They were Republicans.
What has that got to do with the party?
That's my point.
About party.
It doesn't have anything to do with party, does it?
This is not dogma. This is attitude. This is a crass, debauched concept of what it means to be a police officer. You know, let's look at it. The bottom line is that we have about over 400 police officers in the Yonkers Police Department. And predominantly, they are all wonderful, wonderful people. I would put my life on the line for them, and I mean that seriously. And they've been the ones that have been hurt, not only because of the demeanor of the PBA president, who only takes care of his own. You know, if you're a trustee of the Yonkers PBA, you get overtime. And you don't get just simple overtime. You get 60 hours every 2 weeks overtime. These people are retiring on $250,000. Guess what? When you retire in the last 5 years on that overtime, that's why you're drugged up, because you need to stay awake, and that's why you're eating donuts and coffee, because you can't keep awake, and you're not on the job, and you're not doing your job. And it doesn't matter. You still get your overtime. Do you know if you come in 5 minutes before your tour is up and you collar somebody, they give you an extra 4 hours?
Oh, because theoretically you're supposed to have paperwork,
The police commissioner says it's all paperwork, because within 5 minutes he says, well, I'm glad you got this done. You can go home now.
And you get credited for 4 hours of overtime. Wow. Now,
this is corruption for greed.
Now, in the past, I've read stories of yours, and one of the hallmarks has been around budget time, that instead of putting in the correct amount of money in the budget, they put in they under-report overtime and then put all the overtime in the budget and run over. Did they still do that?
Yes, they do. Guess what? We had a budget last year for the fiscal year 2019. And that's supposed to go all the way through until we adopt a new budget in 2020. The process will probably begin in March or April. So the bottom line is, because I think we need to wait for the state to advise us or to inform us what we will get from the state, so that we need to realize what we can spend and where the money is coming from. The only problem is that the amount of money budgeted for the 2019 fiscal year has already been blown out the window. We are running a deficit. We are already way beyond where we should have been. And yet the new police commissioner said that he would reduce costs. He hasn't reduced costs. He has raised costs. He is whatever he's doing, he's not He's not that smart. He doesn't know how to run a police department. That's his problem. And he's a crook himself. That's the bottom line.
Where do we go?
He goes and threatens people. Within the department, he threatens people to such an extent he won't let them move forward if he doesn't like you. If he doesn't like you, he'll destroy you in the department. Do you know how many letters have been presented to the New York State Attorney General's office, to Human Resources in Yonkers, to the mayor's office, to Corporation Counsel, of all people who are still on the force, who've complained about the demeanor of even the police commissioner? Do you know one time? This was not too far ago. First of all, he lied. He had a drinking bash in the precinct when he was just the precinct. He was the head of the precinct, and he lied that he had one. He actually intimidated one cop a long time ago. It's about a year ago. He intimidated to such an extent that he egged the guy to shoot his gun in the police precinct. That's how much he dominated this guy. He freaked the guy out, and the guy shot his gun in the police precinct.
You're kidding.
The crease from the bullet is still there.
Now, has a youth...
This is the lunatic that's out there. And guess what? At the end of the day, people say, well, you got a big attitude, meaning me. I don't have a big attitude. All these people are public figures. Get over it. If you don't want to be a public figure, then stay in the woodwork. But you know what? You're in the front line, and you know what? You are wanting for what you do.
Where do we go?
Enough is enough.
Where do you go from here with a story like this? I mean, you've got the story out there. It's out there. Have you gotten any comments from any of the principals? And what can the public do?
What do you mean? Who are the principals? Tell me.
Well, you've got Olson. You've got the police involved. You have
and what
the
would
mayor.
you like me to do?
No, I don't know.
Well, I'm
really
telling you what. You know what? Everybody says, well, did you call up Mr. Olson? Did you call up, Commissioner Mueller?
Uh-huh.
Did you do this? Did you do that? What the hell am I going to knock my head for? I am so busy. The bottom line is I have no time for riffraff. If I want to hear lies, then I can call these bozos up. But at the end of the day, they don't even respond to a phone call. So why am I wasting my time calling them up?
Understood.
They lie. They've been interviewed on other shows that are produced out of Yonkers. And Olson says everything the Yonkers Tribune is doing is a lie. It's all not true. Really. It's all not true. Well, guess what? It is true.
Now you mentioned
I got the goods to do it, and I'm being sued by 3 of these people, and I was supposed to be in court last Wednesday and on Friday. My lawyer was supposed to depose them on Wednesday, and I was supposed to be deposed on Friday. They canceled it for whatever reasons. I'm not going to speculate. I have a lot of ideas, but I'm not going to speculate on radio. But the bottom line is, now it's been turned over to this week. So I'm going to see them on Thursday when my lawyer is going to depose them, and on Friday they're going to depose me.
Ah, well, you'll be.
And that's where we are.
That'll be.
And there's no reason for me to call when people don't respond.
Understood.
Did you see the press release that Olson sent out? He didn't send it to me, but he must have sent. It looked like maybe 200 email addresses were posted. He's such an idiot. He also exposed all the different people he sent it to. So I saw that my name wasn't there, but I didn't get it. But you know what? That's what I've done in Yonkers. I've learned the ways of these people, and I have what would be called, I guess, a little CIA operation, and I do it right out of Yonkers. And I go around everybody, and I have relationships with everyone. And when something comes out, it says, Yonkers, guess who gets it first? Me.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
And,
That
but I
my
don't write.
guess.
I don't write I don't write the riffraff that you'll see in some other publications, which are simply just making believe that they're covering the story.
Well,
they're not covering the story because they don't know the story.
Let me remind people of who they are listening to. Hezi Aris, the managing editor and publisher of the Yonkers Tribune. He's talking about a piece that's up on his website right now called "The Blue Truth" about this issue with the PBA head criticizing and being upset because the district attorney has outed police officers and others in law enforcement who have criminal records. And we advise you go up, look at the story. Now, one of the things in the story, Hezi, is that sooner or later the state is going to have to answer for some of this that they have. At least that's what I inferred. That the Assembly and the Senate should have some role in this. What do you think that they will? Do you think that they'll get involved?
I don't. I think if the state has the capacity to be involved, and I guess the state is an overseeing body over the county of Westchester, which is where the district attorney has purview, then I guess it's conceivable. If they've avoided engaging in this issue, then I doubt seriously that they will engage it now. And all the costs and the retribution will be paid not by the city of Yonkers when it comes to Yonkers departments, and I'm sure all these other cities, whether it be Portchester or White Plains or Westchester County or Mount Vernon, they'll have to pay. Peekskill too. But the nice thing is we're on the list for every little issue: adverse credibility findings, criminal convictions, pending criminal charges. Yonkers is always represented. Why is that?
Well, those are good questions. Now, where do we go from here with the story? You obviously stay on it. You've been on this story now for years, and what can we anticipate next?
I don't know where it's going to go. I can't. We have to look at the reality. One can conjecture where it can go, since the district attorney Scarpino has already taken a position. So he's saying, "Hey, boys, you're now in my sandbox, and now that you're in my sandbox, you're going to play the way I want it to be played, which is credibly and by the law." So you can't pull whatever you've done before. Not here, not now, because it's his game and he's going to win. And you know why he's going to win? Because it is an election year. And he's going to win this case. Whether he wins the election, that I don't know. Because she's a very strong character and she did very well. There was only a 1 percentage point that separated Mr. Scarpino from Mimi Rocca winning the endorsement of the Democratic Party in Yonkers. But that doesn't matter. What does matter is that this is an election year. It is crucial if the district attorney made this move that he win this, and he will win it. Because you know what? He's got more ammunition than you can conceivably know.
Wow.
And the ammunition he has is really not ammunition that came out of contacting Commissioner Mueller or contacting the PBA president or contacting anybody in the police department or even contacting anyone in government in the city of Yonkers. What he has is letters that indicate and validate the abuse that's happened in the city of Yonkers Police Department. And what you also have to recognize is that this is pertinent to everything that's being done in Yonkers, in the name of Yonkers. And what they forgot, too, is in all the years we've been covering this story, which is like over 8 years now, the bottom line is that people didn't want to pay attention because in Westchester County, if it gets a little bit too touchy, they don't want to talk about it. So they cover it up by not even corroborating anything. Did you ever listen to a show on TV or read a paper in New York City where you can't find the same story, maybe with a slightly different slant than any other newspaper? You could find coverage in Newsday, the New York Post, the New York Daily News, the New York Times,
yes,
and every other organ out there, including the weeklies. Everybody corroborates the same story because it did happen. Not in Yonkers. Not in Yonkers. Because everyone is trying to make a couple of bucks, thinking that, oh, they'll get advertising. Even the advertising business is controlled by the city.
That's
Everywhere you look, they got it cooked, except it's corrupt. And this time, they're on the losing edge. And you know what? The PBA president and Mueller have overplayed their card. They've been doing it for over 20 years. And now they've become innocuous and impertinent as well as unimportant. They've destroyed themselves.
How many of the Yonkers officers or other professionals have been cited by the DA?
What do you mean?
I
didn't understand the question.
No,
I'm
in other
sorry.
words, are there individuals who he has outed, or is it the whole process in Yonkers?
Well, he has outed individuals. A Christian Carrasco, pending criminal charges. Interestingly enough, that particular case is a very recent one. This particular individual is on the police force. He ends up, I don't know how he procured, but he procured equipment that he was selling on eBay or Amazon.
Yeah.
And these units cost about $3,000 a piece. They were taken from the police department. He had no right to them, and he was selling it abroad. The point is, what's interesting here is, in a normal situation, when you have a police officer working in your department will recognize that he's done that. So evidently, we're not looking, are we? So it was fascinating because the feds called up the Yonkers Police Department and they said, boys, do you know what's going on behind your back? And they said, no. Well, then they spilled the beans and they told them. And that's when they arrested Carrasco, which proves one important thing. People have been talking about it for years, maybe 10 years. They say the Department of Justice is looking over our shoulder, but they never realized where they were or when they were. And everyone said, well, do you hear? Do you know? I said, no, I don't. They don't call me up. They haven't called me up. I don't expect a call from them. When they get here, we will know about it. Well, they're here because who else was the one that informed the Yonkers Police Department? But I'm the only one that knows they informed the Yonkers Police Department. Go validate that. Whatever organ you want to find anywhere that covers Yonkers, you won't find it. But they're here. And if this city doesn't watch its rear end, it's over. And that's the purpose of my article.
And
I'm not looking to undermine the city of Yonkers. I'm looking for them to put an end to it. Because if they don't, they will be so sued up against the wall, they will be finished.
Now define.
That's the point.
Describe finished. Bankrupt, found out.
Bankrupt.
That's a lot.
They'll be found out anyway. You think people don't know what they're doing at the moment? People don't think that they know. Hey, I remember John Mueller, who became eventually the police commissioner, where he is now.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when he was stood up there a couple of feet off the parking lot on a downslope toward the street, so he wasn't on police property at the Case Center. I remember seeing him there with maybe 5 or 6 other people behind him, and he had a Vote for Spano sign. He's been a Spano boy from all that time. I'm not talking about politics. I'm just saying he supported this particular elected official who, as you well know, was thrown out of the Senate because he was a disgrace, right?
They
threw him out.
We remember.
Well, I'm not going to call him an FELON because that he knows he was, and now he's resurrected himself. But the same people that supported him, he supports, and this is the way it looks. The point is that it goes nowhere.
Well, that is the point, but maybe, obviously, this story has legs. We now have the DA involved in it. I think there's more to come. Don't you?
Oh, sure. These people are going to be put in prison. One of the things they forgot when it came to sue me is this. They didn't realize in the 8 years that we've been working on this story that people eventually retire. And when people eventually retire, they feel free, and they are free, from ever losing their salary, from ever not getting overtime. We're talking legitimate overtime. they work very hard for their pension. The point is that pension is now secure. And those 8 years have accumulated many, many police officers and captains and police commissioners that all have had enough. And because they have, these people are going to be in big trouble because they've already written the letters that corroborate everything I've ever said, despite the fact that the PBA president says, oh, it's all a lie. It's all make-believe. We'll see.
All right, Hezi Aris, thank you so very much for your time this morning. Whenever you have a breaking story, we'll put it right on. Hezi Aris is the managing editor and the publisher of the Yonkers Tribune. Please go to his website and check out these stories. Now, before you leave, I got to go move my car. Before you leave, I got to ask you this.
Sure.
Where will you have a show at 10 o'clock, and what will your topic be?
Well, we're going to speak to John Bailey from 10 to 10:30, then Michael Edelman from 10:30 to 11, and then Jose Roman. He's a political activist, and also he flies back and forth to Puerto Rico. So he's like our inside man in Puerto Rico when he gets there. Just came back, I think, about a week and a half ago. So he'll be on the show today. We're going to talk to him about Puerto Rico, of course, but we're also going to talk to him about Yonkers politics.
Okay, thank you so very much. Hezi Aris, we'll talk to you again next week. We have returned. It was nice to take a little break. Sometimes we have to do that too. All righty, it is 8:33. At 8:35, we're going to talk with Stephanie Peterson. In fact, we hope she hasn't called yet. Ah, there she is. No, there it is. All righty, folks. Now, why would it be a bit... I see what happened. Okay, let us go to our next guest. She's Stephanie Peterson. She works with IHOP, and she's going to talk with us about Pancake Day. I don't get it. Let's find out what that deal is. Good morning, Stephanie Peterson. How are you?
Hello? Good morning, Bob. I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, we had this story today, and we saw it in our work here, that it is National Pancake Day tomorrow. How did that ever happen?
Yeah, National Pancake Day for IHOP kicked off 15 years ago, and it really is about celebrating all things pancakes. Obviously, we're big fans over at IHOP, but also giving back to our communities by helping our partner Children's Miracle Network and their local children's hospitals raise funds for critical care.
Okay, and I know that you guys do that, but just go back a minute though. Tell us what the genesis of Pancake Day is.
Sure. So, Pancake Day actually started many decades ago, really around Fat Tuesday, and that indulgence is part of the holiday before people started abstaining from that. But for IHOP in particular, for us, this is just really a chance for us to celebrate pancakes and to really live it up on that day. Like I said, we've been doing it for 15 years now. And this year, we really upped the ante on it. So not only can guests get a free short stack of buttermilk pancakes by coming in tomorrow to any IHOP restaurant between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. or even 10 p.m. in certain locations, but they also have the chance to win one of 250,000 fabulous sweepstakes prizes, plus be entered into the grand prize to win pancakes for life. So we are really going big for those pancake fans this year.
Wow. Okay. Now tell us first tell us a little bit more about IHOP. We've noticed, just as fans of IHOP, that you've been changing your stores around a little bit, changing the way you brand it. What can you tell us about that? Then we'll get into what you've been doing to help people.
Yeah, we're always evolving to meet our guest demands and to meet their needs. IHOP is a fun brand. We've been around for more than 60 years. Obviously, we have pancakes in our name, but we're so much more than that. Not only can guests get breakfast all day, every day, but they can also get a great burger. We rolled out crispy buttermilk chicken last year, which, by the way, goes great with pancakes. And most of our locations are open 24 hours. We're run by franchisees, so really local entrepreneurs in your community are our restaurateurs. And we're all about just giving guests a great meal and a good time, a great place to bring the family.
Well, they definitely are. Now, again, I know they've been evolving, but are you keeping the same style for each of your stores, or are you modernizing them? Because I've noticed some have changed their outward appearance.
Sure. So, we're constantly updating the restaurants. Our franchisees put a lot of investment into that, but you'll get a little bit of a difference store by store, just based on where the location is and what's able to be done there. But for the most part, they're very consistent. So you'll see a smile in our logo. We'll never get rid of that classic booth that guests love, and there'll always be 4 syrups on the table. But yes, remodeling will always be a part of who we are as we continue to evolve. But same great food, same great place to be. Okay,
we're talking with Stephanie Peterson. She is with IHOP. Now, you guys are doing something special tomorrow for Pancake Day. Tell us what you're doing and who you're helping.
We sure are. So, as I mentioned, on National Pancake Day, which is tomorrow, February 25th, guests can come into any IHOP and get a free short stack of our famous buttermilk pancakes. But they can also participate in our Pancakes for Life sweepstakes. So there is a piece of merchandise on the table that all guests have to do is scan the QR code that's there. It's really simple. Enter in a little bit of information, and it'll spit out that if you've won one of 250,000 prizes. We've got everything from bikes to scooters, watches, jackets, blankets, everything a pancake fan could ever want is up for grabs, including the grand prize of Pancakes for Life. And then in return, what we ask of our guests is to help your local children's hospitals. So, in the New York area, there's several of them. There's Cone's Children's Medical Center, there's Maria Ferrari Children's Hospital, and there's Children's Specialized. All of those hospitals that we fundraise for, guests can do that by either dropping a donation in the collection jar. They can make an on-check donation, so after they get their credit card receipt, write in a donation total, or buy a wall icon and all that money will go back to the hospital and stay local to help kids in your community.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Now, so if I go in there tomorrow, I get free pancakes. And I get a chance. I get a short stack of pancakes, and then I get the ability to go into these sweepstakes. Now, how long have you been doing this? This is a nice thing to do.
So we've been doing National Pancake Day for 15 years. So we started in 2006, and since then have raised more than $30 million for our Children's Miracle Network partners.
Wow.
And then this year is the first year for our Pancakes for Life sweepstakes. So we expect it to be a bigger and better day than it's ever been before at IHOP.
So I can get pancakes for life if I win this thing. This is not a bad thing. What else do we need?
A lot of pancakes.
What else do we need to know about tomorrow?
I would just say it's one day only, so make sure you get to IHOP, come in and enjoy those pancakes. See if you're a winner of our Pancakes for Life sweepstakes, and thanks so much for helping your children's hospitals.
Okay, thank you so very much, and thank you for being on Radio Westchester. I'll be getting out to IHOPs. That's tomorrow, folks, at IHOPs. If you go to IHOP tomorrow, you can get a free short stack. It's National Pancake Day, but more importantly, what they're doing is raising money for communities, for outreach issues and charities in the community near you. Thank you so very much. All righty, we are moving on, and I know we asked Mitch to call in because we need to get someone to tell us why Bernie Sanders is leading in the polls and whether or not he thinks that we needed to hear from a Democrat, and he is outwardly a Democrat for sure, Mitch is. We needed to hear from someone who absolutely is vested in that outcome. And we will talk with him at 8:50, and then, of course, Bob Cox comes in. There are a couple of stories that I flagged this weekend for you. And one is in China. Martyrs have always played a central role in China's opaque politics, both for authorities to rally nationalism and for the opposition to resist. Now the country's spiraling virus outbreak has one who could become the face of the biggest crisis for the president, that's Xi Jinping, since he took power. Li Wenliang, a 34-year-old doctor in the central city of Wuhan, was sanctioned by local officials last month for publicly warning of the dangers of the coronavirus that is quickly making its way across the world. A death February 7 from COVID-19, as the disease from his new coronavirus is called, unleashed a wave of fury. And it's nice to see that the people there are complaining about it. We have to be now look, I do believe that our Senate hold enough so that whistleblowers are not going to get outed. But sometimes I worry about it. I worry about the Mr. Rand Paul trying to out the whistleblower during the impeachment hearings. The president saying he knows it but won't do it. At least the president is following the law. But still, just the very specter that a whistleblower might be outed is extremely troubling and something that needs to be looked at. Now, another piece, something that we need to be sure we preserve the whole idea of whistleblowers in business and politics and why they're needed. Now, there was a piece in Business Week about people changing careers, and it's called Job Swap. And what they did is they provided a sampling of 1,227 jobs that and they just went to Australia to do it. Australian researchers analyzed. Tired of life as a school superintendent? Consider managing even more difficult people as a wedding planner. Anyway, when I saw this, it made me realize some of the nonsense that you read in the papers about changing careers. And since I did it and know others that did it, I've got news for you. The good news is, yes, you often get to do what you love. The bad news is that you have to work your way back up from the bottom. And there's no two ways about it, no matter what your background was, no matter what you accomplished in your past life. You have to deal with the fact that you are a newbie and you have to start over. Now, I know when I did it and I walked away from Wall Street, I wound up working 12 hours a day, 2 days a weekend for, 6 months, almost a year, before I was able to do something during a weekday night, got a small show, then got a larger show, and then ultimately did some other radio, but then came back to finally do morning radio now, some 13, 14 years ago. But it is not easy, but it is very, very gratifying. All right, we're coming up at 8:44. We're getting ready for Mitch Tarnopol to join us. We'll talk with him in just a moment. First, we'll take a break. This is Radio Westchester. We also have a couple of news stories to recap for you in a moment. Stay right there. All right, we'll get to that call in just a moment. We just want to cover two stories for you. This overnight, officials say one person has died and 3 were injured in a fire at a 4-story apartment building in Yonkers. This last night, the 4-alarm blaze at 112 Saratoga Avenue started just before 8 p.m. Neighbors say they heard people screaming inside the building during the fire. One person was forced to jump from a 3rd-story window. Wow, that's tough. It took firefighters more than 3 hours to get the flames under control. Most residents had escaped with only the clothes on their backs. And Governor Cuomo is getting involved now. At least 18 Jewish community centers across the country were targeted with bomb threats, and that included the Sidney Albert Albany Jewish Community Center. And this is just tragic that this kind of thing is going on. In 2017, a wave of bomb threats targeted a Jewish community and centers, including those in Tarrytown and New Rochelle. So it's not clear if any of the other 18 JCCs in the Hudson Valley were threatened, but nonetheless, the governor has chosen to get involved and made that announcement this morning. So those are the big stories that have been making news locally. Let's go to the telephone. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Bob. This is Tom Abenanti.
Hey, Thomas. Actually, yeah, we got you at 8. We didn't hear from you last week. We wondered what happened.
I had trouble getting through on your phone line. I called on this line.
It doesn't surprise me. I'm glad we have you. We had the county executive, George Latimer, on earlier today, and he was, as you, I'm sure, am very concerned about the $6 billion budget shortfall, and that we are probably and likely going to get nailed by it. What do you know about that?
I always start off by saying we do not have a deficit. This is a manufactured crisis so that the governor can cut spending, so that he can look like a fiscally responsible governor. Way back when he first got elected, he highlighted that if you let all the formulas run the way they're put into the statutes, we'd have a $10 billion deficit. And he rode in on a white horse and said, we've solved the problem. We've cut this, we've cut that, we've cut this, we've cut that. The governor talks from the left and governs from the right.
No,
and the result is that he wants to cut spending. And he's got this spending cap that we will spend no more than 2% every year, a 2% increase every year. And therefore, you have to cut spending because education costs go up and Medicaid costs go up. And then he imposed a 3% cap on increase in Medicaid. And at that, but what he has done is he has moved more and more items into the Medicaid column. So we automatically bump up against the 3% spending cap. You still there? Do I still have you?
No, I'm listening.
Okay.
No, I'm listening clearly.
And
Go
now,
ahead.
but so the deficit is an imaginary deficit. It is a gap between what the formulas would spend if allowed to run versus what the governor wants to spend. Then he's done some budgetary tricks because March's bills came in higher than what would have been permitted under a 3% cap for Medicaid. He didn't pay them, and he rolled $2 billion worth of spending into this year. So now automatically we're $2 billion higher than we should be. Doesn't mean the money wasn't there. Doesn't mean it wasn't put into the reserve funds. Just means he didn't want to spend it. Now, we were spending at that level where you come out with $2 billion more above his spending cap. So now you add last year's $2 billion to the $2 billion from this year that you would have. Now you got a $4 billion gap.
Now, why would he do that?
Because he doesn't want to spend the money. He wants to be able to say he's fiscally responsible.
Gotcha.
And we don't want to spend more than a 2% increase. And let's face it, it's expensive. There's no question we're spending a lot of money on Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
But the way to solve those problems, the way to solve the monetary problem, is to solve the problems is why are people spending, why is there such an increase in the Medicaid costs? You can't just go out there and say, we're just going to cut it, and now it's going to force people to save the money somehow. No, you want people to get health care earlier. You want people to get better health care. You want better outcomes. You want a system that works better for people. You don't want, and that takes management. You can't just put a cap on it. It takes management. I'm not saying there's fraud out there. We have an inspector general who does a pretty good job on ferreting out the fraud.
Oh, but let's understood there's a lot of fraud in Medicare. It's $60+ billion
I don't
across
know.
the country.
The inspector general and the attorney general's lawsuits and stuff, we're not talking billions of dollars of fraud. What we're talking about here are situations, like one was brought to my attention the other day, where you have both private insurance and Medicaid. And the private insurance companies just routinely reject paying for the service. And these are people with disabilities who desperately need the services. And so what happens is the parents of the kids, they take the easy course. They go to Medicaid. They're not going to fight with the insurance company. They've got both insurance, they got private insurance that they're paying for their family, and the insurance company rejects it. Kid needs the service, so they go to Medicaid, and Medicaid pays for it. We should have Medicaid fighting with that private insurance company on behalf of the parent. The parent is too busy taking care of this very sick kid. So that's not fraud there. It's just the insurance company saying, we disagree. We don't think we should be covering that. That's the kind of stuff that's going on. I don't see that as fraud. That's the insurance. That's what happens when you have private insurance. That's why I support a single payer, because private insurance is in this to make money. They're not in this to help people. They're in this to make money. And they're doing what they're supposed to do for their stockholders, making money. The end result is it's costing the state more.
Tom,
and that's what I see as the problem here. And we've got to have the government step in. If we're going to do this, we have to have the state step in and say, we're going to look at each piece of the process. And the governor privatized Medicaid. Anytime you privatize, I disagree with those who say privatization is cheaper. It's not. The insurance companies went out with Medicaid managed care. And they were told you will get it per capita. And then you manage this person and you provide their health care.
Tom Abernathy
signed everybody up.
Tom Abernathy,
very successful, so they got it per capita. So we're paying for administration.
There are two issues here. There are two issues here, and I'm going to go do them backwards. Do you believe that we shouldn't have private insurance? I mean, for example, we have Bernie saying that no private insurance, everybody should have health care, and that's
I'm really torn on that, because I think a big part of the problem is insurance companies making too much money. And Obamacare tried to deal with that by saying you could have no more than 15% administration. Mm-hmm. And that's a reasonable thing to do. The question is whether we can actually enforce that and make that happen. But when you have insurance companies making $1 billion, what did Bernie say the numbers were? $100 billion or something a year? Mm-hmm. I mean, you hear the stories of the bailouts of insurance executives, et cetera, when they leave the companies, and you see their profits. We really have to have a serious discussion about this. Whether we go to Medicare for all or one single payer in New York, right away, I don't know. But we have to have a real serious conversation about what's wrong with the way we finance healthcare in this country. We're really not providing healthcare while countries in Europe and the rest of the civilized world do provide it, and they provide fairly good care, and they don't have the same costs that we do. So we're doing something wrong. And so what is it? We've got to have this conversation. We really have to have this conversation.
Well,
and then the second issue is there a shortage of money? And I don't think there is.
Well,
I think the governor just doesn't want it.
I think you've articulated very well what he did was he rolled forward the spending into the next year so he wouldn't exceed his own tax cap.
Exactly. No, it's not a tax cap. It's a spending cap.
Well, spending, same thing.
Revenues
yes.
are
I'm
there.
sorry. Yes, the spending cap, so that he
and
can look
besides,
physically. It's kind of like. Do you remember the old movie Slapshot when the coach says they're just scaring the workers, saying that they're going to close the plant so they'll all appreciate that they got jobs.
Right.
This is what he's doing. We're talking with Assemblyman Tom Abenante here on Radio Westchester. We talk with him each and every Monday around this time. Tell me something.
But Bob, the other thing is, look, there is money out there. We're not going to scare the billionaires away if we increase taxes on people who make $5 million or more a year. They just got a tax cut from the federal government. We can take that back. They're not going to go anywhere. A little bit of money here, a little bit of money there. If we're short on the budget, we should be doing that. We've got to pay for public education in New York, and we're not paying for it enough. Look at your local property taxes, how high they are. Why? Because we're paying for education through property taxes, and that's not right. We're paying 90% of the tax bill. The governor himself said 60% comes locally, statewide. In Westchester, it's more like 80% or 90% in some districts.
Wow.
So that's not right. Why? The people who make more money should be paying more in taxes, and the people who make less money should be paying less in taxes. It's very simple.
Anything else?
The governor just doesn't want to look like he's raised taxes.
Anything you want to shout out about today?
Well, yeah, we're going into the budget season right now. This is a crazy process. The governor has so much control over it. I think I've complained about this before. The Constitution gives him a lot of power. There was a case called Silva versus Pataki many years ago. So it's not just this governor. It was before him, George Pataki and other governors who took advantage of their power and forced things on the legislature that the legislature really didn't want to do. But it even gives the governor the power to give his budget, give 20-day amendments and 30-day amendments. So we just got his amendments last Friday. Fortunately, he didn't make any major significant changes, but there were a few changes we have to look at. So now we've got 30 days to figure out a budget before April 1.
Yeah, good luck with that.
A $176 billion budget we've got to do in 30 days. That makes no sense.
All right, listen.
No sense at all. So we got to take a serious look at this whole process. Some of the things that, I'm a big critic of the governor, because I think that's the legislature's job to be critical of him. I think right at the moment he's doing a good job in standing up to the federal government, and I applaud him for that. I think the federal government is trying to force on us some policies that are different than the policies of the people of the state of New York, and I don't think that's right. And I applaud the governor for that. At the same time, there was a story back in the Times on last week about how the system for housing people with serious developmental disabilities is falling apart. And I think the governor's got to take a serious look at that. So these are the kinds of things that we're going to be looking at over the next 30 days.
Well, please do.
And hopefully we'll come to a budget together.
All right, keep it up. And thank you very much, Tom Abenante. We'll talk with him again next week. We've got to finish up one other call, and coming up about 9:05, thereabouts, we will talk with our regular Monday long forum guest, Bob Cox. Right now, we're going to go to someone, maybe he can and maybe he cannot give us some insight into how the Democrats really feel about Bernie Sanders. Be sure I got this right. Hold on, please. All righty, welcome to Real Radio. Please welcome on the telephone Mitch Tarnopol. He is a Democrat, and he has agreed to give us his take on the candidacy of Bernie Sanders. Good morning, Mitchell.
How you doing, Bob? I heard there was some big breaking news today.
Yeah, well, we had that earlier. The Hezi Harris breaking that story coming out of coming out of Yonkers, and he's actually being sued by the people who were named by the district attorney. So interesting stuff.
Hezzy's being sued, or the DA's being sued?
Hezzy's being sued.
Hezzy's always being sued.
No, I know, but in this case, he was sued by people who the DA just in effect said, "Hey, we're looking into them."
I got to tell you, you know who's probably a very wealthy man or woman?
Who?
Hezzy's lawyer.
Well, all right, let's get to cases. Bernie Sanders, can he win?
Well, you know, you would know better than me. You're both Brooklynites, and you both grew up around the same time.
Yes, we do. Oh, I'm not that old. Can he win?
Yes.
What will it take?
And I continue doing what he's doing. I mean, look, I think there's a couple of things going on. I think parties aren't what they once were. Donald Trump sort of proved that in 2016. Bernie has a lot of enthusiasm behind him. And I don't believe people, you know, when you and I were growing up, labels sort of meant something. Conservative, socialism, it meant something. It doesn't mean what it meant years ago. People don't even like to be given labels anymore. Talk to a lot of, especially young people. You know, they look at socialism, capitalism. It's meaningless to them. Is it working? Is I think what they're concerned about. So
no kidding. Do they even, as I've been saying all week long, do they even know the difference between a Republican form of government and a direct democracy, or for that matter, a parliamentary democracy? Do you think they know?
I don't think people of our generation knew. So why would they know? I don't. Listen. When we were growing up, if you asked someone who was that congressperson, 9 out of 10 people never knew. So. Young people today may know more than we actually did when we were their age.
Well, that's a lot. Well, let's get down to cases then. He's going to have to defeat a president who seems to be improving in the polls. He, even in a column yesterday by the rather fair-minded David Brooks, is considered so totally to one side that he's not willing to compromise, perhaps even more than the president has recently.
True. You know, there's a lot of similarities. And the similarities is that they both have very strong, very dedicated, very enthusiastic bases. I think Bernie's base might actually be bigger. And I've maintained all along that I felt that any of the Democrats running could beat Trump. And that the only person that could actually make sure he doesn't lose is Trump himself. But I don't, waiting for Donald to pivot, that's not happening. So Donald is Donald, and probably is and has always been his own worst enemy.
Okay, the outlier here is Michael Bloomberg. Now, he did tragically, his performance was awful last week. So now we ask you, do you think that a lot of people feel that the Democratic caucus, the insiders, will try and edge Bernie out, that they feel they have to have a moderate? I'm getting the sense from talking with you this morning that may not necessarily be the case anymore.
That ship has sailed ever since the internet came into play. It used to be where the party elders would go to someone and say, "You got to get out of this race because we're going to make sure your money dries up.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to cut off people from donating to you," and they used to be able to do that. With the internet, with small donors, they have no control over that. Bernie has a boat full of money. Liz Warren has a boat full of money. If they want to stay in the race to the end, they got enough money to stay in the race. So you can't force anyone out anymore. It becomes very challenging and difficult to force anyone out. Maybe you could force Amy Klobuchar because she doesn't have the kind of money that the others have. But outside of that, no. And look, I think what's happening, and I think I said this to you last night about stopping Bernie, it's the old Yogi Berra expression. It's getting late early.
Oh, it's getting... But you do think he can win?
Most definitely. most definitely. Bernie has a certain charisma, a certain something that attracts people. And winning is infectious. So, the more he wins, the more people are going to come to support him. So unless one of the others could start winning, I think Bernie will be running away with this.
It's going to be a hell of an election then. Mitchell, thank you very much. We'd like to get you on for more and better. Thank you so very much. Mitch Tarnable, everybody. You heard it here. He thinks that he can win and that he's going to get the nomination. All righty then. It is 9:04 in exactly 60 seconds. At 9:05, we talk to our regular long-form Monday guest. He's, of course, Bob Cox, managing editor and publisher of Talk of the Sound, considered the source since 2008. And we take our last look at the weather. And the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. It is already 43 degrees. We're going to get up to the mid-50s this afternoon. Plenty of sunshine. Don't see a cloud in the sky, although they say we may have some building later this evening. And tonight, mostly cloudy with showers arriving after midnight. Lows around 40 degrees. The wind out of the southwest. It'll be light, 5 miles per hour. Tomorrow, cloudy with periods of rain throughout the day. Still mild, but not as warm as today with highs around 49. And Wednesday, showers will end very early in the morning. Clouds break for some sunshine, highs around 46. But at night, it will drop down as things dry out to 26, but warm up on Thursday, getting up again in the mid-40s. Do expect the 20s late at night. And it's without further ado that it's 9:05, and that means it's time, almost we could say time for Bob. Bob Cox, managing editor, publisher of Talk of the Sound. Robert, good morning. It's good to see you again.
Good morning.
Hold on, I hit the wrong button. I've been doing that all day today. It's good to see you again. How goes it?
Very good.
Now, you cover so many different stories. We like to give you free rein. What's at the top of your queue?
Well, I saw the story about the bomb threats against the JCCs.
Yes.
I've been reporting about all the incidents of anti-Semitism within our public schools. Mm-hmm. And, I certainly see a connection there. Anti-Semitism has been on the rise across the globe, nationally, but also locally. And I've expressed this a number of times. I'll express it again.
Please do.
Our school district is not doing enough to deal with the issue of the swastikas in the schools. And, they keep announcing they're going to have student assemblies where they're going to bring in some speaker to talk about the general topic of hate, but they don't seem to want to address square on the actual incidents of anti-Semitism that are happening in the schools by some specific action. And so the other day we had the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, mm-hmm. and the Holocaust Remembrance Day. Mm-hmm. And, there was some chatter about it beforehand on social media. So based on that, I made an inquiry from the school district as to what events they had planned. Was there anything that could be covered, by the press? And the answer I got back was that there was nothing planned. Then 2 meetings later, after there was increasing criticism of the district for ignoring the event, they brought forward a resolution. Mm-hmm. But has become sort of the pattern. It was sort of a muddled mess. Mm-hmm. So it was a resolution, again, generally condemning hate. And then it made references to various aggrieved parties, mm-hmm. Which it mentioned specifically. It didn't mention Jews, right? It mentioned LGBTQ and so forth. And then tagged on at the end that it was in the commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Mm-hmm. And, there's been some blowback on that ever since. That's been sort of bubbling beneath the surface. Mm-hmm. because it raises a real question, which is, why would you need to talk about anything other than Jews and Auschwitz if you're going to have a resolution regarding Holocaust Remembrance Day on the 75th anniversary, which was, marked around the world. It was especially marked in Europe. Why can't you just have a clean resolution that addresses that? So I don't like that at all, because it seems like we have a leadership in our district that is unwilling to just directly address the issue. And the issue that we have is 20 different incidents of hate crimes, swastikas, in our schools at 3 different schools over an 18-month period. In the context of what you mentioned happened in 2017 with the JCC in Rochelle, in Terrytown, what happened over the weekend, what happened in Pittsburgh, what's been happening around the country, what's been happening around the world. And when you have, let's put it this way, I don't mean to be graphic here, okay? So I don't want to offend any snowflakes out there. Tell me what would happen if there was 20 different incidents at 3 different schools over 18 months of nooses being hung around the schools. I was thinking
that very thought, yeah.
Okay, tell me what would happen.
People be up in arms. The NAACP and all the people who care about those
well,
issues
I would just point out
be up in arms.
The most vocal person on the anti-Semitism issue has actually been the NAACP.
Well, good for them. Good for them.
More so than the Jewish community, which has been almost completely silent.
Are they used to it?
It's not a matter of used to it. It's a matter of like, I met with 2, the head rabbis at 2 of the synagogues in New Rochelle during this period of time. And their idea is they want to handle everything behind the scenes. I won't get into naming names. These were sort of off-the-record conversations. But, the one guy was telling me about all the things he had done. And I kept asking the same question to peel back. I said, well, what led you to do that? And then he made some other statement, taking credit for something that preceded that, peeling the onion back. And I said, the reason that you were doing any of those things is because of me, because of my reporting, because I'm the one who's been reporting about the swastikas. Every single swastika that's been reported came from me.
I just want to back up a little bit there. Is it possible, and this is conjecture on my part, but I have to go there, a lot of the communities where Jewish folks reside here in New Rochelle, particularly the North End, they're very supportive, generally speaking, of the school and the administration. Does that weigh into this at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's different elements to this, okay? But I don't want to get into people's heads and get into their motivations. I just want to deal with the reality. And the reality is that we're not seeing any kind of vocal public demonstrations, actions, statements. No, from the Jewish community.
No, but I want you to back up.
Forget about me. I'm not Jewish.
No, I know that, but it doesn't matter. One doesn't have to be Jewish to care about these things.
Yeah, but if you are Jewish, you should care.
Well, what do you think?
Okay, we don't see that.
What do you think is driving this around the world? That we're seeing this uptick in anti-Semitism. Neo-Nazis have gained not any real power, but they're growing in Germany of all places.
Bob, you're very misguided on this.
How is that? You don't think it's growing around the world?
Okay. The issue isn't neo-Nazis.
Go ahead.
The issue is the far left.
You think it's only the left?
I didn't say it's only the left.
I'm asking you. No,
okay. I'm saying that what's driving this is the far left, which is pro-Palestinian, very much anti-Israel, and you will see in.
Do you equate anti-Israel with anti-Semitism?
Well, can I answer the first question or the question before that, or the
question
before that? Because
I concatenated
on about
them.
question 5, and I haven't answered the first question.
I didn't get to 6 yet. Go ahead, Robert.
If you go and look at the various protest rallies that are organized on the far left. Okay, what you will often see is that the people that are in these protests are carrying swastika signs. Okay, And the reason for that is because they're equating Jews and Israelis with the Nazis. Okay? If you didn't understand that, you got an example of that over the weekend on a far-left cable network, MSNBC, which had two different people on their air equating the Bernie Sanders campaign and his supporters with Nazis. Now, Bernie Sanders is Jewish from Brooklyn, who lost a lot of his family in the Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the far left is at. Okay, they're in this bizarre space that Jews and Israelis in particular are Nazis. Therefore, you're seeing this proliferation of these different acts, including this anti-Semitism. So my question to you would be, do you really think in this community in New Rochelle that the driving force between 20 different incidents of swastikas in 18 months is because we have a bunch of skinheads in our schools?
Of course not.
Well, what do we have a lot of? We have a lot of people from the far left, including teachers and other staff and students.
But what if I'm inferring correctly, Robert, is that you're saying that these people are from the far left, even if they're Jewish, and don't want to step on the far left's toes.
I'm not saying that either, Bob.
Well, that's what I'm inferring. So, but you're.
Well, I don't know why you're inferring that. Well, I'm not saying that
because you talked about these folks not complaining, and then you talked about the far left being anti-Israel.
I said if you look at the protest march that are organized by people on the far left, you will see that some of those people are carrying signs that have swastikas on them.
Right, I heard
because
that.
They're making the correlation that Jews, and in particular Israelis, are the new Nazis.
Well, that's terrible.
Okay, but you can say it's terrible. It's not. This is the fact.
Now, but how does it relate to the people here in New Rochelle?
Because what is driving these swastikas appearing all in the schools? What's driving it? I'm fairly confident it's not neo-Nazis or skinheads or the far right. Mm-hmm. We don't really have that in our schools. We just don't.
That's absolutely
if
true.
You were, I don't want to badmouth some other state, but I mean, this is Westchester County. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Nazis and skinheads aren't really a big issue here.
Right.
Okay, what is a big issue here is the people on the far left. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they don't like Jews. They don't like Israelis. They support the Palestinians, and it doesn't take a far leap to go from that to
no wait though to support the Palestinian cause necessarily mean that you have to be anti-Israeli? You're not saying that.
Well, Bob, I'm saying what I'm saying. So you keep trying to.
No, because I'm trying to understand what the implications of what you're saying.
The implications are very
I know
serious.
people that have issues with the way Israel has behaved as a state who are not in any way, shape, or form anti-Semitic.
Okay, you're asking me the question as to what's driving the examples of anti-Semitism in New Rochelle, which is what I'm talking about. And I'm telling you that we don't have. You mentioned neo-Nazis, and I'm telling you that we don't have a lot of neo-Nazis running around Albert Leonard Middle School.
I was talking about what's going on. Yes, I was talking about what we read about in Germany, and I wanted to broaden the issue of what's going on around the world.
I'm not talking about Germany. I don't cover Germany. I cover New Rochelle.
Well, why not?
Okay.
Anyway, go ahead.
I'm trying to deal with the fact that for whatever reason, we're not willing this as a school district and as a community to address this square one. I will tell you, I'm the only person in this community who's actually saying the kind of stuff that we're talking about right now. It's not coming from people in the Jewish community. It's not coming from the leadership in the Jewish community. They're silent. They're absolutely silent. I've actually foiled for the communications between the school district and leaders in the Jewish community. Mm-hmm. I've been waiting 3 months to get that information. Okay? They don't want me to see it. Like a lot of things. They don't want me to see it. Okay? But I think that I'll start with that issue, okay? So when the most recent incidents occurred, Dr. Fahu issued a statement, and I don't want to quote it, but paraphrasing it, that they were going to basically catch the people and hold them accountable. Mm-hmm. How are they planning to do that?
Well, I think you've underscored that before. They don't even have cameras and different things in the schools.
We've had a problem over the past few years. A lot of people, I don't necessarily, we've had a lot of complaints from parents and students about the number of false alarm pulls in our schools. We've had in the past year, allegations of multiple sexual assaults in the schools. Okay, the one teacher was arrested for some of them. Another girl complained, and a student was arrested for another. But there are multiple instances. Mm-hmm. And then we have the swastikas. Okay. Yes, I don't understand why we don't have cameras pointing and covering every aspect of every building. In fact, every fire alarm, switch should have multiple cameras on it. Okay, the entire exterior of all of our buildings should have cameras on it. These cameras cost $35.
Yeah, they're not very expensive.
Okay, you buy them in bulk. They can be set up to be wireless, Wi-Fi, or Bluetooth. It doesn't require a whole bunch of electrical wiring. We're choosing not to do it. Okay, in the current budget, you're going to hear, especially now that I've been squawking about it, we're putting in some money for some cameras. Mm-hmm. Well, they've been putting in money for cameras for over a decade.
Do they put in the money and not buy them? Or could they put them up and not use them?
No. Let's say that to actually cover all of the schools, inside and out, you would need 2,000 cameras. Okay, I'm just making up a number, although I do know the actual numbers. Okay, but let's say you need 2,000. So if you have 400, and then you're going to buy another 100, you can announce, we're buying more cameras. In fact, we're increasing the number of cameras by 20%, 25%, sorry. It's not actually addressing the issue.
No, it's not. It reminds me of my speech writing days. Yeah.
Okay, so my concern is that you can't say that you're committed to doing something about the swastikas, let alone the sexual assaults and the fire alarm poles, and then tell me you're not going to do everything you possibly can to have a meshed system of CCTV cameras, and also importantly, people who are trained and are actually doing this to monitor those cameras in real time. Because I've asked this question. I asked this question of Dr. Fahey. Where exactly in the building did these sexual assaults allegedly occur? Where in the building are these fire alarms being pulled? And where exactly in the building have these swastikas shown up? Because there's a thing you probably know about called CompStat from New York City, or New York City at least made big use of it. Okay, I would like to see a map that shows me a dot where every single instance of these things occurred, and then understand what's happening with the cameras at those locations and what's happening at the time of the day, and who's monitoring them. Okay. We also have other issues with alarm systems and other things like that. So people don't know this, but it was said in a public meeting, so I'll share it with people, that over the Christmas break, somebody broke into the Webster Elementary School and was in the building for over an hour. And nobody knew about it until they showed up after the break. Okay, because there was no alarm systems. They were able to go back and look at some of the cameras and see the person moving around the building. But, that should tell you something about the general attitude towards security in our schools. Okay. And I went to a recent meeting. I used to be on the security committee called the SAVE Committee. I was thrown off in part because of asking questions like these. Okay. So I hadn't been back, but I did go back the other day because I wanted to address a concern I had with that committee, which is that I had started the process of putting together proper open meeting law procedures so that there would be agendas and minutes, and that they'd be posted to the web, and any material that was discussed during the meetings would be posted online so people could read it. I went back to check that and see how they were doing, and hardly any of it was online. And when I brought all this up and said, well, wherever it is, I want to get it. They're supposed to have audio recordings of meetings and minutes and agendas and meeting packets with all the different documents they've had. They've actually been voting on resolutions that they have as a committee. There's very little documentation of what they're doing. So I went to the meeting that they had. And from what I have been able to glean through the limited records and talking to committee members, what I saw a week and a half ago, was kind of typical of one of these meetings, which is they met for under an hour, and they spent a good deal of time talking about stuff that has nothing to do with their mandate. And most surprisingly, we're paying 6 figures to have a consulting firm, Alteris, advise the district on security. They don't come to the meetings.
Why not?
I don't know. They don't come.
But isn't it likely, not that you're the be-all and end-all of answers, but it would seem to me the recommendations you've made make a lot of sense. Wouldn't they be getting these same recommendations from these professionals? Or do they just want to keep them off the record?
Well, when you say recommendations, do you mean things like the cameras?
Yes.
Bob, they've been getting those recommendations since 2009.
So then why bring in another consultant when they already see that? I just want to go back to something, but first let me remind people, you're hearing, this is, of course, Radio Westchester, our long-form interview with Bob Cox. He's the managing editor and publisher of Talk of the Sound, considered the source since 2008. He's with us each and every Monday. What I'm getting at is precisely what you're saying. They've known this. Why bring in a consultant when you already have the answer, or do you want to be able to triangulate it? I don't understand why even bringing in the consultant.
Well, since
You've had a committee that worked.
Well, I would say, just point out to you that since Sandy Hook in December of 2012, you've had 3 different security assessments and 3 different firms come in: VRI, Guidepost, and now Alteris. You had a citywide, district-wide committee with almost 50 people on it. The Bryce Task Force, which met for months. You had a Culture and Climate Committee, which dealt almost exclusively with the school resource officer, police officers in schools for about a year. And you've had this SAVE Committee, which is supposed to be addressing basically Columbine, Parkland type events. Sure. That's what it was created for. Then they've been operating, in its newly reconstituted form since 2018. But they were put back in place after Sandy Hook. Okay, so to answer your question, it's not that they don't know that they need to put cameras up or have people look at the monitors while the cameras are broadcasting information, video. They don't want to.
Well, that's now we're to where I was headed.
Because just think about it, okay? I know they don't want to. I know from talking to people they don't want to.
Why not, Bob?
Okay,
what is the common thread that they don't want people to know?
Well, it's not.
Is it in the DNA of them not to want to be open with them?
No, it's that the employees of the district, especially and almost exclusively the teachers, okay, they don't want to have any rules. They don't want to have any accountability. So when we, for example, as our committee, attempted to put in place a policy to deal with illegal electrical wiring and illegal equipment in the classrooms, we got a lot of pushback on that. Okay. And it's actually still never been implemented, even though our committee passed a resolution over a year ago and gave it to the board, and the board did nothing about it. Now, I believe that the facilities department has taken it upon themselves to do something about it, but the board was supposed to act on that and develop a policy, hopefully based on our recommendations, which were based on state fire code recommendations and things like that. So to keep it simple, okay, you're not supposed to have, it's illegal, for example, in schools, to take a power strip and then plug in another power strip to extend the wiring. Okay. If you're gonna put an electrical device like a microwave into a classroom, it has to plug directly into the wall.
Yes.
Okay. But they didn't want to do that. Okay. The electricity actually costs money, especially if you're running something like a refrigerator. I've seen classrooms that have 2 refrigerators. Okay. So should the teacher who's decided that they want to have a refrigerator in their classroom, and remember, this is really for personal use. Okay, it's not because the students need to put science experiments in refrigerators. Should they pay for that? Okay, those are a bunch of issues. Well, we got pushback on it, number one. And number two, we ultimately voted to adopt a policy, okay, that we thought was fair, and union leadership is on our committee, and so they were on board with it. And then it's languished with the board, and it's never actually been passed. Okay, because the teachers in the school district don't want to have any rules. They want to be able to do whatever they want. Okay, I made a big push a number of years ago to have time and attendance systems, basically digital punch cards for employees, okay, because we had a real problem with people stealing time, getting paid for overtime they didn't earn. So they implemented that, okay, and as far as I know, it's worked very well, except that they excluded administrators and teachers. Well, they're most of your employees, okay. The argument that was made by certain board members was they were professionals and they shouldn't have to punch a clock. So that was the argument there, but they didn't want to do it. And the cameras, well, and also cameras, CCTV systems isn't just cameras, it's a whole system, but it can include things like door alarms, okay, that a camera would go off if a door is open, etc. They don't want that either because they want to be able to come and go from the building through side entrances and back doors and classroom doors. And they want to be able to not be monitored as to what's happening in their classroom. Inexplicably, there's not cameras in the exterior of most of the schools. There's not cameras in the stairwells. So, this is not complicated, right? It doesn't, put it this way, every set of assessments, the recommendations they got made the same recommendations. Why? Because it's obvious that this is what you would do. They don't want to do it because the teachers don't want to be held accountable.
They don't want to be held accountable
for I don't know what, sleeping at their desk. They don't want to be watched.
Let's go full cycle on something and go back to what started this conversation. Again, it's 9:30. Bob Cox, our long-form guest, managing editor, publisher of Talk of the Sound, considered the source since 2008. The common thread here is things aren't transparent, number one, and number two, there's this clamp on bad news. But when we go, this anti-Semitism thing is really troubling, Bob, for all the right reasons. And yet the school doesn't want to, it boggles my mind. What's the worst that they're going to learn from doing this right and catching these kids?
Well, the point is that the equipment that you would use to catch people making swastikas, pulling fire alarms, raping students, is also the same equipment that would document that a teacher left early during the middle of the day or came in late or skipped out for a 2-hour lunch or whatever. And they don't want that level of accountability. Okay, so actually one of the key people on the SAVE committee, who's apparently appointed himself the director of safety for our school district, even though he's a teacher at the high school, has been one of the most vocal people about not having the doors alarmed and not having cameras on the doors because his classroom has a door that opens up into a parking lot, and he wants to be able to open the door and come and go and, alter the air temperature in the room by opening the door or whatever. So when you have people who are actually on a security committee, okay, who are flagrantly violating basic security principles, that's a problem. And I'm just telling you that the reason that we don't do these things is because they don't want to do them.
That's what I'm learning.
Yeah, because there's nothing standing in the way financially. There's nothing standing in the way technically from doing this. It's just a lack of will.
Let me go back another step, and this goes back to my own management days. There are lots of reasons to put a committee together. Sometimes you do it because you really do want everybody's input and come up with a consensus. And other times you do it because you don't want to make the decision yourself. It seems to me that these are the kind of decisions that can be made by executives.
Well, first of all, the SAVE committee, which is the Columbine type committee, it's mandated by state law.
Okay.
As is the other committee that I'm on, which is the health and safety.
Okay.
So the law for health and safety is rescue, and the law for the Columbine thing is save. The way I put it is that the rescue committee is that so a brick doesn't come loose and fall on your head.
Of course.
And
Which has happened, by the way.
And the save committee, actually it hasn't, but...
No, I'm talking about when the roof fell in.
Okay, but nothing fell on anybody's head. And then the save committee is you don't want someone throwing a brick at you. Okay. So that's the difference between the two. I sat there for their less than an hour meeting. They spent about 10 minutes of their 60 minutes talking about the coronavirus, where a person who's not actually on the committee took the floor. Coronavirus has nothing to do with the SAFE committee. and yet they spent 10 minutes on that. They spent more time on other things that really have nothing to do with the committee's business. The most bizarre thing was that there was a discussion that a member of the committee, the same person, the teacher, it's a public meeting, I'll just tell you, the guy's name is Steve Newman. Mm-hmm. And I've known Steve for a little bit, and he does some good things with the school district, but he also has sort of some unusual ideas about his role. He's a math teacher, okay? But like I said, he thinks of himself as the head of security, head of safety for the school district. So a big part of the discussion was he wrote scripts for what would be said in the event of an emergency, go out on robocalls, and what would go out on the PA system. Mm-hmm. And so at the end of the meeting, I really wanted to comment about the fact that their public records weren't available online as they're supposed to be. But I couldn't help but comment. I said, I don't understand what's happening with this committee. I said, you actually have members of the committee who are doing the work. And that's not what this committee does. This committee is appointed by the board, and they're supposed to make recommendations to the board. So what they can do is they can make a recommendation that there should be a script written for PA or robocall in the event of emergencies. That's the function of this committee. The board would then decide whether to do that and pass it along to administration if they want that done. But they're not doing that. In fact, this committee actually had a vote, which was to basically authorize Steve to do more work. Well, this is a board-appointed committee. They don't have the authority to take a salaried employee and tell him that instead of teaching math, you should be doing this, this, and this, writing scripts or inspecting, fire drills or whatever the heck he's been doing. I just sat there amazed. Apparently I know they did spend a lot of time on transportation bus protocols. Mm-hmm. Busing is not part of a SAVE. We're talking about a law that was passed in the wake of Columbine. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out what this committee is supposed to be doing. So they're spending a lot of time on coronaviruses, on discussions of busing, about reviewing scripts that have been written by a member that are now going to be given out to every building principal, and that when there's an emergency, they're going to read from the script or have a pre-recorded call. And you sit there and you go, what does this have to do with school security?
Well, really, now a question comes to mind. There are resolutions. Are any resolutions binding? Can the committee make something happen without an executive approving it? And then if so, who approves it?
The SAVE Committee's function is to work on the district-wide health and safety plan, which gets submitted to New York State, and that's their statutory function. Again, they have no function regarding actual implementation of security or safety plans. They don't write scripts. They don't build software. They don't get into medical issues. The only reason that transportation would be an issue, and this is not meant to be a joke, is if a bus was hijacked. Mm-hmm. That would be a case where the SAVE law would apply.
Right.
But they're not doing that. So they're having these ridiculous things like if there's a bus accident. Well, they apparently, from what I heard, developed some kind of protocol. There already was a protocol. I mean, you think that we didn't have a protocol for what happens when a bus gets in a crash? So they apparently wrote a protocol, and then part of the discussion was there was a bus crash involving two buses at the Ward School where they had like a fender bender, one bus sideswiping another, and the protocol they wrote wasn't followed. Well, of course it wasn't followed. And it's not really the function of the committee to enforce, first of all, to develop a policy like that, and then it's not their job. That's actually the transportation department's job.
Bob, you as you always do, quite frankly, you've done a good job of outlining how these things work and what some of the problems are. What can be done to fix this? What can be done at least to improve it? Fix is an absolute word. What can
I was on the SAVE committee for a few months, and I had this battle even then when I was on it, because members of the committee wanted to keep pushing issues that had very little to do, if nothing to do, with the actual mandate of the SAVE committee under New York State law. And it's not uncommon, right? You get committees, and then people want to push it into their own area. But there isn't anybody at the table who's willing to say, no, that's not what we're here to do. At the time that I was appointed to the committee.
Did it have a chair?
Yeah, co-chairs. Yeah.
Co-chairs. I don't like co-chairs. But anyway.
Whatever. But anyway, Chuck Strom is one of the co-chairs, the city manager, and the other is currently Bruce Daniele. Before that, it was Jeff White, the assistant superintendent for business. But, you know, the main function of this committee is the district-wide safety plan. And that's something that you're required every year to file with the law. And it's supposed to be hearings about it. There's supposed to be public, discussion about it by the board. There's this whole process you go through, and you're supposed to keep updating it every year. Okay. So that's the main function of what they do. And, when I was on the committee from July till November of 2018, and I wasn't officially appointed until September, but I was going to the meetings anyway prior to being appointed. I was asked to. The main thing that we had to do was there was a deadline to get the safety plan filed in November. So when the full committee was finally appointed in September, there were several people on the committee who wanted to talk about non-save issues, like issues about transportation, about the buses were late and the kids were getting on the wrong bus, and you don't want to have that happen, but it's not the same thing as the Parkland shooting.
Right.
Okay, and that's what we were there to deal with, and to get the safety plan filed with the state. And we're only meeting for 75 minutes a month. So to be spending time about because little Billy got home late on the bus or this kid got on the wrong bus, it's not for this committee to deal with. I tried to push back on that and get the committee focused on what it was supposed to actually be doing, and I was thrown off the committee.
On what basis? Did they give you a reason or say they don't want you
They didn't
anymore?
even tell me. I found out about it because somebody called me and said, there was a resolution last night that they took you off the committee. That's how I found out. But that's really neither here nor there. The point is that this committee is not actually doing what it's supposed to do. And the people who are been hired to develop security plans and implement them, Altiris, don't even come to the meetings. So what's the point of all this?
Who's responsible for inviting them?
What do you mean inviting them? It should be part of their contract.
No, but you
they're
make
being
my
paid
point
a
for
lot of
me.
money.
No, I understand that, but someone has to have the responsibility of holding their feet to the fire, Bob.
I don't know. How about the school board?
Well, then the school board.
How about the
They need to be
superintendent?
called out. She then needs to be called out on this. The chair people, see what, and maybe because I come from the private sector and I scratch my head at this stuff, but if someone's supposed to come to a meeting and they're not coming, somebody's feet need to be burned and burned hot.
Well,
or they need not to be paid.
On the committee I am involved in still and have been involved in for going on 4 years now.
Yes.
We require that the construction management company who's overseeing the bond construction, Jacobs, is at every meeting. That they have to.
Who's the we?
Well, it's our committee as a whole. But
it's your committee as a whole, but administratively, it speaks through whom?
Well, we report to the board. So if we make a resolution like about the wiring policy, we pass it along to the board. It just so happens that we have traditionally had the vice president of the board on our committee, but the vice president of the past year became the president. So Amy Moselli is still sitting on our committee, and for 2 of the meetings, the superintendent also came to the meetings. Okay. But our liaison into the district is really the head of facilities, Mr. Thurnow, who does a very good job. But the point I'm making is that when you have a committee like ours and there's construction in a school, the committee expands by statute to include people involved in the construction. And it's supposed to be all the contractors. Okay, but having 18 contractors coming into our meetings and then giving reports, even for 2 minutes each, means our meetings are now going to be 2-3 hours long, and nobody wanted that. So instead, we came up with an understanding that our committee members had the right to attend any of the construction management meetings we wanted to, and some of our members have. I have occasionally. But if we wanted anybody to come in and speak to us because there was a specific issue with a specific project, then they could be called to come in and talk about whatever. And, a safety issue, right? And there has been safety issues. Not a lot, but there's been some. And we brought people in. So I'm aware of 3 different companies that were actually brought in to explain different problems, okay? and they're getting questions. They're getting their feet held to the fire. These are public meetings. There's a record. There's minutes.
This is good.
And then the architectural firm, which is overseeing the project, CS Arch, they also send a representative. So you have the head of facilities, you have the head of the representative of the architectural firm, representative of the construction management company, Jacobs, and all the construction companies that are working with them. And so we get reports from Jacobs about what's happening. We also do our own tracking of information as to complaints that people have filed about different problems with the buildings. They don't do any of that I saw with the SAVE committee. They don't have anybody there from Altiris or anybody else that's helping with security. I was told that they came to one meeting since they've been hired. One meeting. I think 4 times the committee didn't even meet. So I want to say that there's been 15 months since I was thrown off the committee. They've only met 11 times.
And yet this is a committee that's legally
mandated by state law.
The state.
Yeah.
Okay. And so my listening skills haven't failed me yet.
No,
How do they get away with that?
Well, I mean, listen, if they want to come back and tell me what I missed, that's fine. I told you that I went to...
No, but don't they have a requirement to meet at some regular intervals?
Well, I don't know that the law specifies anything like that. I mean, we developed a tradition, at least with the rescue committee, that we meet monthly for about 75 minutes. We get a packet before the meeting. It has the Jacobs report on the construction issue, any complaints that are coming in. Every month we do a different topic, like whether it's air quality or mercury or whether it's green cleaning or whether it's whatever. I don't see what they do, okay, with this committee. I can't see because they're supposed to provide all the documentation about all the agendas and the minutes and the packets. They don't do any of that, or they do very little of
Don't
that.
they have a secretary on the committee?
Yeah, they have one of the security guards that works for the co-chair with Chuck, which is Bruce Daniele, is taking notes. I gather they're making recordings, but they're not on the website. I've been asking about this throughout the month of February. I got a little bit of additional information, but not much. And I would say that overall, of the multiple categories of things they're supposed to have up there, they got about 25% or less.
Dumb question, but not really a dumb question. Do they follow Robert's Rules of Procedure at their meetings, which requires that the minutes be accepted from the previous meeting before you start a new meeting? Now, you know that. I know that.
Okay, so the format that they have in their meetings are the formats that I devised for the rescue committee. So when I was on the committee, I created a thing, and they do, as a policy, have Robert's Rules of Order, but there's something you can do to facilitate conversation in a committee like that, which is you can relax Robert's rules. Okay?
Well, of course. But,
so,
but there are certain basics, though, like
relaxing
minutes.
Robert's Rules doesn't mean like I kick my feet up and take my shoes off.
Right, exactly.
It's a thing within Robert's Rules that you can say we're going to relax it so that you have different requirements to take action. People, for example, don't necessarily need to be recognized by the chair.
Right.
You don't need to have a second on a motion.
But don't you still need minutes? That's what I'm getting back to.
Well, yeah, of course.
Okay.
I'm not sure your point, though.
No, my point is that you're not getting information, but there should be minutes there every week. They have to exist.
I don't know where they are.
Okay, but that was my point.
Okay, I mean, there's some, but it should be 100%, and they're below 25%.
Because I understand relaxing the rules, not having to be.
So it's hard to
recognized by
say
the
what's
chair.
really going on, but what I saw in the meeting that I was at left me shaking my head because I see that there's. What should never be happening in a committee like this is that the committee should be authorizing a member to do the safety and security work.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that this committee is actually, and a committee member is drafting scripts. That's not the role of this kind of committee. What this committee does is says, we think that you should have pre-written announcements that should be recorded.
Mm-hmm.
They want it to be in the voice of the building principal, and then they'll carry something on their iPhone. And if there's an emergency drill, you push button 1, and it's a message goes out telling everybody to get out of the building. It's a real emergency. And there's another button you press, and it says, this is a drill. Everybody get out of the building, whatever. You can decide as a committee that that's what you want to do, okay? But I don't know why the committee itself would be working on that. You discuss it and make a recommendation to the board, because you're appointed by the board. This is, 101. stuff, and they're not doing it.
We're coming up on 9:49. Our guest, Bob Cox. He is the managing editor and the publisher of Talk of the Sound, considered the source since 2008, our regular Monday long-form guest. Where can we go with this, Bob? What can people do? I mean, you uncover these facts, but how do we move forward and get something productive, A, out of that committee, B, for example...
We're not going to, Bob, because the people in charge don't want to actually address these issues.
But, I mean, you've opened this with something
I've been writing about this for 12 years.
No, I know, but it's so troubling that we're not following up on anti-Semitism. It's horrible.
Well, I mean, like I said, I mean... they can have student assemblies, and they can have guest speakers come in, and they can do this and they can do that. And they can pass resolutions, but I'm not interested in any of that. You can do all that. Nothing wrong with doing all that. Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't understand muddying the water by linking together general issues of hate with Holocaust Remembrance Day, because last I checked, Holocaust Remembrance Day really isn't about Black Lives Matter.
Right.
Okay, it's just not. We don't, do a lot of talking about Jewish history during the month of February, right? We have Black history. We don't talk about Jewish people during Martin Luther King holiday. There's not a lot of symposiums on Jews who helped in the civil rights movement, for example. It's about Black people. It's about Martin Luther King. I don't understand why the waters have to be muddied there, but... you can do all that stuff. Fine. I don't care. It doesn't address the actual issue. The way you address the actual issue, that there are people drawing swastikas and expletives with swastikas on school property, is you point a camera at every square inch of the campus, inside and out. You have people monitoring it in real time. And you have other features like motion detectors and facial recognition and all that other kind of stuff. And you use it. Okay, so you asked me, I think, once about, well, what do other school districts do? Okay. Well, first of all, they do a lot more than we do. And the private schools do a lot more than we do. But that's not my criteria. When we're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on security, which we are, then my model is really what does someone like JFK Airport do, or the New World Trade Center, or a hotel in Las Vegas.
And what are we getting for our money? I mean, we're spending millions. But I'm not hearing a lot.
Well, I would just say that with the amount of money that we have spent over the past, let's say, 10 years, we should have a world-class security system. And we don't. We don't. How do I know we don't? Let's see. You had a teacher repeatedly raping a student in the high school in the past year. You had another student who alleged that she was raped in school. You've had stabbings. You've had murder.
The aforementioned swastikas.
So what is there even to discuss? The security system in our schools is entirely unacceptable, and yet nobody really cares. I don't see, for example, I don't see students walking out to say, you need to do more to keep us safe. No student should ever be raped in a high school.
God, no.
Okay, but we have that. We've had numerous instances of that now. Okay, they'll walk out for a football coach. They'll walk out because Indivisible Westchester leads them out there to protest about gun control. They'll walk out on climate change, things that, they may feel are important, but don't actually address them personally. Their own safety. They don't do that. Okay? Nobody wants to do it. The teachers don't want it. The administration doesn't want it. Okay, the board, maybe some of them do want it, but they don't know what to do about it.
Are they playing dice, though, by not having this? Aren't they playing
Bob, we've already had rapes and murders.
No,
what do you want?
Bob, I'm...
So the dice already came up craps, right? It already happened.
Yeah, in more ways than one it came up craps.
Well, we had ceiling collapses, which could have killed 24 kids. We've had a murder. We've had a stabbing in the school. We've had rapes in the schools. What more do people need to know? You know what you need to know. You're just not doing anything about it. Okay. And when I sit there and I watch a committee that's supposed to be dealing with security in our schools, spending about 20% of the meeting talking about the coronavirus, which has nothing to do with this committee. Okay, these are people who are just say, and where are the people chairing the meetings? Because I'm going to tell you, I have actually chaired meetings, and truth be told, I'm also now I mentioned the Green Ribbon Committee. I'm chairing. Yeah. I'm actually the chair of that committee.
Good.
Okay, and when people do this kind of stuff in the meetings that I'm involved in, I cut them off. We're not here to talk
as
about
well.
That.
You should.
Okay, we have a limited amount of time. If people want to stay after and talk about the coronavirus or tiddlywinks or whatever else they want to talk about, you can stick around afterwards. But we have a limited period of time together each month to go through our issues. And what I do is for the last several years, I'm the one who prepares the agenda for the rescue committee. I prepared the meeting packets. I prepared the same for the Green Ribbon Committee, because we have people's time is valuable. You have a limited amount of attention from these folks, and you also have to be brief, but you also have to make them understand what's expected from them. Okay, what I saw as a meeting of the SAFE committee where most people were kind of staring out into space. There was a couple of people talking, the rest of people really weren't involved. So I don't know what Altiris is doing, because we're told we can't know that. They're supposed to be doing something.
What do you mean you can't know that?
Well,
You're
don't know
the
what they're
safety
doing.
committee.
No, I'm not on the safety
No,
committee.
but I'm talking.
But they don't even come to the Altiris doesn't even come. So I don't even understand how this committee can be doing work on things, and Altiris is not part of that discussion, because they're being paid to do some of that stuff.
I have a question for you that actually involves you in regarding this, and I know I asked it of you once before. You ran for the school board and came very close to getting elected twice. My gut is if you ran
came
again,
very close. In other words, I lost.
No, but you came very close. And here's my point.
I lost.
Yes, you did. You lost twice.
Yes.
Okay, just to draw a little.
And had enough.
If you knew you could get elected again, and I suspect you could, I think you once said, and I may have this wrong, that you can do much better good by what you're doing now. Or do you think you'd be better off on the board?
Well, being on the board is a popularity contest, and I'm not somebody who's going to be popular.
Yeah, but there are people that know that you're accurate, that you're on the money, that you tell the truth.
Look, I'm pointing out problems with this committee, and I'm pointing out problems with what's happening generally with the implementation of the security recommendations. But at the same time, I've been serving for 4 years on this rescue committee, and now I was the guy who was the impetus for the Green Ribbon Committee, which, by the way, I didn't want to announce it ahead of the district, but I can announce now that the school that the committee, that the Health and Safety Committee recommended was the Barnard Elementary School.
Okay.
So, in fact, there'll be a meeting this week. Unlike Rescue and Save, I don't think that this is actually covered by open meeting law, because it's appointed by the superintendent, and it's really a working group. However, we met at the Carew Room at City Hall with the door wide open. If anybody wanted to come in and listen, they can. It's just that it's mostly homework assignments for the different people that have to write up answers to certain questions. So if you want to come to a meeting and hear people being
Give us a
given
couple of such as. What kinds of questions?
Well, there's the Green Ribbon application is many pages long, and it has all sorts of questions that have to be answered by different people. So there's a bunch of questions in there, and it's like, give us 200 words about this and 400 words about that regarding nutrition. So the food services director is supposed to write what we do about food. The medical director writes stuff about what we're doing regarding certain things with medical. A lot of it's by the facilities people for obvious reasons, because it's about recycling, it's about air quality, it's about things like that. And then everything is involving the actual building leadership. So the principal, and he's asked 2 people to be on the committee that will help him write up all the answers. But basically it's an application, and it requires the involvement of a bunch of different departments, plus the people at the school, plus facilities. So the goal is to get everybody to write up their pieces by the spring, and then we'll put together all the different pieces over the summer, have a draft ready by September, approve it by October, and submit it to the state by November, and then wait to see what happens.
You know, what's kind of Bob doesn't take a compliment well, but I'll go there anyway. you point out these things about the school system. And one of the things that people need to understand is that you've been willing to be on the board twice. You've now, by my count, been involved with either once before or now 3 different committees.
Yeah, 3 committees.
And you're willing to serve. And people should remember that too when they want to.
Well, the truth is, I don't think a lot
die.
of people are aware of that because
Well, that's why I underscored it.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of people coming at me on social media about I wanted to destroy the school
You
district.
sure do.
And I'm like, the reality is I'm trying to help where I can, and I want the schools to be physically safe. That's why I'm on the rescue committee.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we have a very legitimate application for the Green Ribbon, which is, by the way, a national award. Because we have made tremendous progress over the past 5 years, not in small part because of the work of the facilities department and what our committee has been doing. So we're a legitimate candidate. Doesn't mean we're going to win, but the goal of our health and safety committee was a few years ago when we first discussed the Green Ribbon was we're not ready yet. This was about 3.5 years ago, but we're on track to become ready. And now we feel we are ready. And so we're going to apply. And we think we have a pretty good case to make. But, it's they pick from all of the schools in the state.
Mm-hmm.
And then they make recommendations to the U.S. Department of Education, and they decide. So it's a multi-step process. But this is not, no offense to the Chamber of Commerce, but this is not like you buy a table and you get an award.
No, I know. I understand.
This is that you have to actually compete. And so, even having a valid application, which, by the way, people will be able to read, is a tremendous sign of progress. If we actually were to get recognized by any of this, it's a legitimate achievement.
Well, if there's any aspect of it, well, we're here for what you do, but if there's any aspect for that committee that we can help shed a light on, any of your co-chairs or whatever, put us on. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just want to mention that we had talked the other day about getting to work on a show for myself.
Yes.
So what I have been doing is thinking about that. And one of the things that I want to get listeners to help out with is I want to have a section where people can send in comments, questions, and tips.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the show, we'll cover those. I'm working at exactly how, but it's meant to be a radio show / podcast, so audio. So we'll have a thing where people can record something on their phone about what they want to say, and then email it or text it. They can put it up on Twitter. They can call in a phone number and leave a message. But I want to do more like that because there's an awful lot of people who can't necessarily listen to the show when it's actually scheduled to air.
So you pot it up.
But I still want to hear from them and try to answer the questions.
Do you have a name yet for the show?
Yeah, actually, I think I do.
Can you reveal it yet, or you're still?
Yeah, no, I think that.
Please,
I will.
please.
I'm leaning towards words in edgewise.
Words in edgewise.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, I actually have had that domain for about 10 years. I never used it.
Well, that's like
so this may
that's
be
like
a chance to
another
use
show
it.
we have coming up. I bought a domain name called pothockey.com.
Well,
and so I get that.
But I'm just sorting out the format and how it works and whatever. But it's not just going to be like Talk of the Sound, New Rochelle, Sound Shore stuff exclusively. We'll cover all that stuff. But we cover that stuff here.
I know. I want to be a guest on this new show.
Yeah, see if we can work something out.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. This is cool. You ended on a high note. Words in edgewise.
Yeah, so you and I will talk and get that sorted out and hopefully have something together soon enough.
Yes, we will. Bob Cox, thank you very much. He's the managing editor of Talk of the Sound, and now you know one of the new shows that we will be airing, Words in Edgewise, hosted by Bob Cox. What a cool thing. All righty, Bob, thank you very much. We've got to thank Vince Russo, George Latimer, Jake Twice, Mitch, Stephanie Patterson. Don't forget, Bob, if you like pancakes, if you go to IHOP tomorrow, they're free. A short stack for free. Tom Abinante, and of course, Bob Cox. We want to thank our sponsors, Aging Issues Management, their partners, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Pena & Con, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. United Hebrew of New Rochelle, also a sponsor, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. It's a beautiful day out there. You probably want to take your lunch and bring it to the park. We can't promise you'll have a whole week like this, but we can promise you that you'll have a nice day. I'm Bob Marrone. Thank you very much for listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone. We will see you tomorrow at 6:30. And goodbye, Bob Cox. Wave to everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening, folks.